You know, I didn't like Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
Really at all.
I didn't really know him.
He really started to tell the truth about Israel. Right before he got killed, he was begging Trump not to do it. And, you know, he turned on Israel. He called them out for October 7th. He called them out for all the evils that they do, the genocide, the ethnic cleansing. He called Israel out for flooding America and Europe with immigrants. The founder of Israel, David Ben Gurion, the first prime minister, who was atheist, by the way, did not believe in God.
Yeah.
Right?
So was Herzl.
Right, yeah, Herzl was atheist too, but they're Zion.
Why would somebody who doesn't believe in God think that God's chosen people need a land?
I heard that he was a womanizer, and they bailed him out back in the day.
Yeah.
And they've had him by the balls since they stopped the Trump empire from going bankrupt. Because Epstein orchestrated in the 90s the bailout. And now Trump doesn't have a choice. Because here's the thing, and I want to finish with this, just so people understand before they hate people and demonize people.
Welcome back to Far Out with Faust. Today we are strapping in for a raw, unfiltered, and deeply intense conversation with my friend Matthew Murphy. Matt is a former Green Beret and Special Forces operator. He was detailed to the CIA for a time and even spent a good portion of time in Africa helping a small nation form their own intelligence agency. After enduring the loss of his 26-year-old sister to human trafficking, Matt repurposed his pain into action, founding Operation Lightshine to rescue children from exploitation. But his mission didn't stop there. Today, Matt has shifted his focus from kinetic warfare to exposing the psyops and propaganda mechanisms used by those in power to divide, manipulate, and control society, a worthy and noble cause. In this episode, we take a sailor's dive into the geopolitical deep end. We discuss the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913, the orchestrated manipulation of global conflicts, and the stark difference between the Jewish people, whom Matt grew up with and deeply respects, and the political Zionist agenda driving the geopolitical push for Greater Israel and a Third World War. We also discuss the profound spiritual warfare which is happening right underneath the mainstream narrative. We discuss all the tactics that the global parasite class has been using to keep us panic-stricken and docile, and all the ways to break out. We discuss why it's so important to find faith, hope, and peace in your own soul, and how it is the ultimate act of rebellion against the parasite class. This conversation is heavy, eye-opening, and ventures into a lot of places most people are scared to touch. Strap in, keep your mind open, and welcome my brother, Matthew, to the show. Matt, my friend, welcome to Georgia.
Good to be here, man.
Good to have you, man. I appreciate you beaming in. So, Matt is someone I've been tracking and following and collaborating with. Well, when he was allowed, you know, we both go through stints where we're not allowed to do that because of the nature of our posts on Instagram. But you know, I've heard him talking about so many things, and I was like, bro, how far are you from Georgia? I was like, you got to come on my podcast because his insight. I mean, he's a former Green Beret, Special Forces, you know, trained in assassination, counter-assassination. He's got his hands and toes in some incredible things, and you know, I could just get a sense of that from his posts, and everything we talked about at dinner last night blew my mind. So you guys better buckle up because this is going to be an exciting ride. We're gonna get into a lot of very prominent and important topics that are happening in the geopolitical world right now, with our president seemingly having lost his mind. I mean, there's a place we can start. Well, first, give everyone a 20,000 foot view of your incredible background and what your work you've done. So,
definitely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, man. It's great to be here. So, I would say that to start, I was a lost child, and then as I became a young man, didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. Joined the military. Went to a combat tour in Iraq for 13 months. I saw a truck pull in one night to this base I was at with guys with beards and cool guns wearing whatever they wanted to. And I was like, who are those guys? And, you know, because you just see all these, everyone's in the same uniform, everyone's on the base, dressed, doing what they do. And these guys are just doing whatever the hell they want, dressed how they want. They look like they could rip your head off, you know? Yeah. And I was like, I want to do that. And somebody's like, those are Green Berets. And I was like, okay, cool. So I went and tried out. made it. What cliff noting here,
Right.
And then got detailed to the CIA. So did a project with them for years, and but then retired as a Green Beret. And when I got out, well, before I got out, I lost my sister to human trafficking.
Oh my God.
She was taken on November 5th, 2019. And then her body was found in a river in Mississippi. So she's taken from Memphis, body found in a river in Mississippi on Christmas Eve, 2019. So she was missing a little less than 2 months.
How old was she?
She was 26. So hell for the family to go through.
Oh, I can't.
It's we had already been through a whole lot with her life because she had a bad drug problem and all that. That's what led into it. And so 2020, COVID hit after that. I decided to start a charity to fight human trafficking and child exploitation. And there's so many events. We could talk 3 hours about how it happened, but ended up founding a charity called Operation Lightshine. Partnered with Tim Tebow shortly after that. Then we expanded the charity.
Tim Tebow?
Yeah, Tim Tebow, the football
former,
guy. That does all the charities.
Yeah, the homeschooled Denver Broncos football that everyone ragged on because he would get his team to take a knee and say a prayer before, which of course is controversial in our modern day society. But yeah, Tim Tebow, a lot of respect.
He's a great man. He's done a lot of good for the world with the Night to Shines, where he sends the disabled children to like a prom like thing, and has orphanages and missionary things all over the world. Just a great human.
He's a
being.
good egg, you can tell.
Yeah, he is. He is a good man. And so partner with him and through his foundations, money. A lot of people donate to the Tim Tebow Foundation. They became a financial backer of Operation Lightshine, and then we started to build these task forces to save kids from human trafficking, child exploitation. And then 2023, I resigned and turned over the charity, a small team of the Tebow Foundation, and it's still growing. My calling really wasn't to be the CEO of a charity, right? I just wanted to be in a fight or run an operation, and a CEO spot is not really the spot I wanted to be in at that time, right? Because a charity, you can only be about the mission. You say one thing outside of it, you lose a donor, or you lose a whatever. You've seen my Instagram, right?
Oh yeah.
So then I took over the Sentinel Foundation president. The founder of that, Glenn Devitt, made me the president literally 5 minutes after I resigned from Lightshine, and we had developed respect for each other during the years. So I was at Sentinel for a while. Brought Ryan Montgomery over with me, the 0 Day, that hacker that's on the Sean Ryan show.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
We built a little rock star team. I think he's still involved with Sentinel. They share his content online all the time, but I don't know if he even works there anymore or not. But they sure do. Like, they post a lot of his content, but I don't even know what they do or he does now. But the founders and I left, and within about a few months of each other, and there was a dynamic though of that where it's just really my wake up call that the human trafficking world was getting heavy, because when you become that guy on social media every day, right? Somebody's telling you a kid's missing or that they were as a child. And I'm not saying that I didn't care, have apathy. It's just a lot for one man to handle when all these people have access to you, and you read a message and someone talks to you about how they were by their dad and all this stuff, and what I'm doing inspired them, or they want to help, and you want to respond to everybody. You want to give everyone that opened up to you and was vulnerable to you. You want to be able to give that back, but it's just like there's so much time in a day. I'm married, I got kids, I got run a company, and it just started to really overwhelm me personally, emotionally, spiritually.
I can't even,
and then, went through a nasty divorce,
and we talked a little bit about that.
Yeah, a little ugly.
Kid Rock is involved. That's all we'll say.
We'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at that.
It's crazy.
Yeah, man. And, I don't want to get sued, but, I just married the wrong person. I don't want to say anything bad about her personally. She was just not the person for me, and it just turned into the most toxic, terrible situation I've ever been in my life. And so, it took me a while to heal from that, and it was a dark place at the end of that, man. And went through a lot, but when Charlie Kirk got killed, and also during that whole time, I started an intelligence company. We did a lot of stuff in Africa. I won't say country specifically, targeting, manhunting, stuff like that. And walked away from that, walked away from the charity. I was like, I want to repurpose my life. So I was trying to figure it out, dealing with, all the things post-divorce, and then Charlie Kirk got killed. I didn't like Charlie Kirk. Really at all.
I didn't really know him.
Up until a few months maybe before he died, I'm like, Charlie just said that? Because I always thought he was like a neocon,
Me too.
Conservative
Me too. I had no
party.
idea that he had strayed as far as he
Yeah.
did, which was...
Well, they didn't promote that.
Right.
He had his so if you didn't listen to Charlie's podcast, you wouldn't see it because TPSA wasn't sharing that stuff at that point because they got all their money from those Zionist donors.
Right.
So he really started to tell the truth about Israel, right? And I was like, man, because I had called him an Israeli cuck, and I don't know, can you say that word? I don't know.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I think we say that word, but I posted about how much Charlie was just like a Ted Cruz or a Marco Rubio or just any of those guys that put Israel first, or I forget the other guy's name. He's one of the worst. Randy Fine. And like those guys in politics that just they wear the yarmulkes, Israel first, America second. You're like, how are you even a leader in my country? Yeah, joke, right? So that's really when I got emboldened to start speaking out and saying something. Because at that point, because of the charities and just the stuff, I had a smaller following, maybe 15 to 20,000 followers, on social media. And then, we got up to where now I'm over 100,000 followers. And now, and I was like, wow, people are really being receptive of this.
Right.
And people are like, I'd meet people at like a restaurant and be like, Matt, I'm a fan. I'm like, oh, what? It's like, man, I'm just talking shit. Well, I mean, telling the truth, but you
just sharing my perspective.
Right. You just never know what's going to happen. Right. And when it was something like that. And then, I started to really be like, wow, man, like once a lot of people start to follow you, that's, you can't just make stupid jokes anymore.
No, you got to know.
I still do it a little bit, but I make sure people know it's a meme.
Right.
But you have to, I feel an obligation to tell them the truth now, to really be straightforward, and it's a balance, right? Because there's some things that I shouldn't say or don't want to say.
No,
so I'm not trying to get Charlie Kirk either.
Right.
But at the same time, I think courage is contagious. Yes. And with Charlie's death and what I really learned in the end about he started to speak out against Israel and the deep state, and he knew the war with Iran was coming. And right before he got killed, he was begging Trump not to do it. And, he turned on Israel. He called them out for October 7th. He called them out for, all the evils that they do, the genocide, the ethnic cleansing. He called Israel out for flooding America and Europe with immigrants.
And he even called his donors out at the end.
Yeah. I mean, they pulled his money out. They pulled money out, and then he stopped their money coming in.
Yeah. And he refused Netanyahu's enormous sum of money that it was offered, which, of course, probably would come from Americans in some way.
Yeah, it was probably from our tax dollars, right? Because Israel is America, right? In that sense, we give them all the money.
Absolutely.
They're like, oh, it's only $3 billion. It's like, no, bro, it's like 20, 30, 40, 50 billion a year when you look at all the different packages and all the different things sent over there.
Oh, well, we need 200, we need $5 more billion to help them stay armed. And
or $200 billion to fight the war for them right now.
Right.
That's not for us.
No. No. I mean, and I just saw a post from Thomas Massey, they just found a way to loophole a bill in which will allow for the printing of, another $150 billion. I'm like, just great. That's just what we need. Let's start printing more, as if we didn't print enough during COVID and, the inflation rate. I was like, you don't need to be a calculus master to understand it. Just play the game Monopoly. What would happen if you can't go bankrupt because anytime you want, you can pull more money out of your pocket? What's going to happen to the property value?
Right, everything.
The money has to devalue. The property value, you need, everything is going to go up in price because there's more money in the supply. It's not a mystery. It's common sense, but
they're destroying us.
Yeah, there's been and people are like, well, one day we'll pay off the debt. I'm like, what the fuck world are you living in? You can't pay off $39 trillion, period.
Who are we gonna pay it back from or even borrow? Like,
exactly.
How do you borrow money to pay that debt?
That's an insane amount of money. You could build a bridge to fucking Mars if you could physicalize the money. $1 at a time, you could walk to Mars, probably even farther in the solar system.
Yeah,
because
it sounds far away.
Yeah,
I mean,
but it's insane. You couldn't even count to fucking 39 trillion in your lifetime. People don't understand how much money that is.
Well, but also at the same time, man, money's not real. So when they started the Federal Reserve, the way the systems works is we have treasury bonds, right? And that's what funds the government every year. So when the government's freaking out about losing money, it's like, we just print more money, because they literally print money That goes into the treasury bonds. That funds the government. Our tax dollars are given to other countries.
Right.
You
They're
know?
sent everywhere and done everything with except for us.
So, but the money's not real because in the 70s, Nixon removed us from the gold standard. So there's nothing backing our money.
Yep.
The only thing that keeps our currency in play and in value is petrol. Right. So if you look at what's happening in the world right now, we're the petrodollar. Like the only country that trades petro not in our currency is China.
Right.
It's the only one. Every other country trades currency. They're
forced to.
Our currency.
Yeah, they're forced to.
Well, this is why we went into Venezuela. It had nothing to do with the people or how
The
oppressive
oil, the
Maduro
silver,
was.
Maduro.
Yeah, well, because December of last year, J.P. Morgan shorted silver $8 trillion.
I saw that.
They got short squeezed, right?
Yeah.
And then they went to Malaysia and they tried to, quickly do what they could. I think they got $1 trillion or $2 trillion of silver out of some type of deal. But in Venezuela, they had the second largest stockpile of crude oil in the world, right? Outside of Iran was number one. Weird. Right. We just went to war with the number 1 and 2 stockpilers of
Go
Iran.
figure.
Yeah, man.
Just coincidence.
Yeah, but we care about the people. Just remember that it's all about
Spreading
the people.
democracy.
Yeah, democracy and freedom. So we're going to murder all of them to help them. But anyways, we'll get there. So, Trump goes into Venezuela. Now he's secure an oil pipeline, right? Well, Venezuela has some of the richest crude in the world. Their crude can be refined into anything oil.
Right.
That's black gold right there. Like because a lot of the crude we have here in America can only be turned into fuel. Right. Like you can use their stuff for anything.
Right.
Well, it didn't start coming here. So we invade Venezuela or take out Maduro, put some puppet that knows if they don't do what America and Israel say, they're going to kill him or her or whatever. And then the gold starts disappearing. The silver starts disappearing.
Yeah.
And then, but where's all the oil going? Because our gas prices didn't go down.
No.
If we just got this great deal.
Trump just made a checkmate move. He did?
Yeah.
Just secured all of Venezuela's oil, stole all the, I'm like, no, Trump didn't do that. Maybe someone did that, but it wasn't Trump. It wasn't the United States government,
Well, Charlie Kirk also said before he died, the president's a puppet. He's an actor. He has no authority. He told a lot of truth. Enough truth where a man with the following, because let's be honest, a lot of adults didn't really know Charlie Kirk.
No.
But Charlie Kirk had the largest following of young adults in the country. He converted, a majority, a super majority of the youth in this country to conservative values.
He did.
And then following Jesus. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm not saying like not to convert to a party. Parties are fake and gay. Right. But sorry, I don't know if we can say that either. But he like more conservative and love your family, wholesome morals and values, right? The things that matter. And, but so if the man who did that, because then, of course, that base is going to start voting neocon no matter what, because neocons in Israel control the red.
And for a while, Charlie was doing what they wanted him to do, but then Charlie started to note, when I first was exposed to Charlie was after his death. And of course, the superficial veneer that is thrown up for you is, well, this guy was always pro-Trump. He was always pro-Israel. He was, he was always close, was friends with Netanyahu, and that, and I'm like, so what? Like they made it seem like, he said one thing. No, over the course of 2 years, he completely started to see what was happening, predict what was going to happen, and use his position to try and prevent it. Use what he thought was a friendship with President Trump, who he helped get elected. Little did he know, I think, that he was a Manchurian candidate who had tossed his programming and was now a liability. And I believe his relationship with Erica, and I believe they were both obviously set up together. But Charlie was a problem, and they did everything they could to try to get him to.
He was too smart.
Yeah, and he had too much integrity, and he was naive about who he was going up against.
100%.
Which often leads to a public figure's demise.
I don't think he was naive. I think he knew. But
he started to know.
Here's the problem: when you follow Jesus, and I believe he truly did.
Yeah.
When you follow Jesus, Jesus stood up against the Pharisees. Jesus was crucified for standing up against the very people, or
He wouldn't conform.
the synagogue of Satan. That's what I call them. The people that are the antithesis to the God of Abraham, and that, you know, it doesn't matter what they worship. If you're not worshiping the God, then you're in some type of demonic God or energy, right? And so that's what I believe. That's the way I look at it. And so, you know, that's those same evil forces, you know, the prince of darkness, if you will, the prince of this earth that has all these different ways he distracts man. He doesn't need to make you believe in him. He just needs to make you not believe in God or not follow God or not pay attention to God. That's all the devil has to do. It's deception. He doesn't need you to worship him. He owns your soul if you turn away, right? So the story goes, right? You know, and so I think, that's the way the story goes, right? But then, you know, there's the concepts of heaven and hell. We could go on tangents for days on that, but I think just from Charlie Kirk's perspective, and
Charlie Kirk had a very solid Christian perspective,
100%.
But you know, he was about the family, and he was about Jesus, which I can get behind both those things. You know, I don't buy into the stuff that I consider the special editions added for fear, you know.
Right. Oh no. Well, that's where religion gets put into place.
But I think, you know, a lot of people who are still in that religious, particularly the organized religion framework, you know, they're confined to that kind of thinking because it's been so indoctrinated. You know,
100%.
I believe everything is of God. You know, I believe that this figure, that this rival of God, it was made up to scare people, you know, into believing they had to do whatever they were told to do. You know, whether that was pay, you know, if you seek a priest, pay him $10 and then he'll forgive you for your sins. God will forgive you through the priest. You know, I have a problem with all that.
Yeah, no man can absolve you.
No, I have a lot of issue with that because I don't believe in a wrathful God. You know, I believe in you know, I have children and I know that my children, they could never do anything to me that I would banish them to eternal suffering for. You know? So the notion of this hellscape and God, oh, here's free will, but you've used it wrong. Now go down there and, you know, like you know, what am I more merciful or an understanding than the Almighty? No, of course not.
What's the slippery slope for me on that? You know, because of the whole,
for a lot of people it is. Not just you.
You know, because if you think about it, like, yes, God, the creation, and the way I look at it is like lightness and dark, right? You know, and so you can't create darkness. There's no thing that you can make that creates darkness, right? Darkness is only the absence of light, right? So I can block the light, right? The deception is blocking the light, right?
It's separating from the light.
So I do believe in a removal from God. Like, you know, we're like, you know, I think
that's hell.
Yeah, that's hell.
In my mind.
Hell is not it's not having God.
Right.
Where anything evil can live and
Agreed.
Name it, right? So that's the concept. I think that if you look at what the Bible says about God, if you look at a lot of the writings about God outside of the Bible, the books they wouldn't let in and all that other stuff, is that when, you know, the way the story kind of breaks down, right? Book of Enoch is probably my favorite book if you want to try to make sense of things.
Right.
And it ties in almost every story of God or gods, from Greek mythology to Roman mythology, where you have the... you know, the God, and then you have the demigods, because gods wanted to hook up with chicks. And then you look at
apparently
God,
that's what they say.
You know, and
I mean, I don't blame them, you know.
Well, I mean, women are beautiful. I'm like, I get it, you know, but also at the same time, you know, that was forbidden in those days, right? So Enoch basically says that the sons of God found favor in the daughters of man, and that's in Genesis 2, you know, and then with the child were the Nephilim, right? So this hybrid. Because if you look at the concept of creation is what would make, if you had to drill down creation to its most finite thing that makes us, you know, that when you create it, to me it would be DNA, right? Because that's your code, right? That's a code that makes you physically. That's the code, I believe, that connects to your spirit, to your physical.
I agree as well.
Because you say it's made in the image of God, right? Well, what is the image of God without the DNA to make you in, and then attach your soul? Right. You know, so does my soul have it might not have a physical form, but what do I look like in spiritual form, right? Do I look the same? Or do I have a whole nother look? You know, do I not have a receding hairline in spiritual form?
Right.
I don't know, right?
I bet you I do.
Oh, yeah. It catches up with you, right?
You know, what you just said is so if you read, there's a book by Greg Braden called something. It's Greg Braden was a code breaker. He actually worked for the Pentagon for like 15 years when he was young, just to pay the bills. But he's an archaeologist. He's a geologist. He's an incredible dude. He's written a ton of books. But one of his books, he takes the DNA and decodes it, and he finds that literally the word of God is in the DNA, in the spelling. Of
Yes,
it's it's amazing find, and it's like, so this signature of the divine, of source of God is written into our DNA. It's into the fabric of our being, which is, like, in a sane world, that would be like something that people would be talking about. But of course, we live in a world that is very material oriented, and people they're more than ever they're interested. Greg Braden's going to go back on Joe Rogan for the second time, which means
love that.
the first time, I don't know if you heard that conversation, great conversation, he had with Joe, but Joe's having him back on, which tells me that more and more people are becoming interested in these subjects, this, like, our origins, how we got here.
Who are we?
Yeah, we're always like, who are they? We don't even know who we are.
Right? Why are we here? That's I think the why
Yeah.
is the biggest thing I want to figure out, because again, I have had I have had a lot of experiences in my life,
Yeah.
in my journey, like everyone has, but just because of what I've done, I think I've been pushed to the limits of things and
Yeah.
seen things a lot of people haven't, right? If somebody's never left their suburb and became an accountant and all that, I'm not talking bad about that, but you haven't really pushed your life to that limit. You haven't been at the
Right.
tip of the spears of things. You haven't been behind the curtains of things. So your worldview is largely going to be
Right.
shaped by what you see on the news, what you hear in your church, and
Right.
what your friends, your community, your culture believes, right? So I've been able to travel all over the world. I've been able to, study with and learn about. I speak Arabic and learn about Islam. I've read the Quran. I've been all over the Middle East, Europe,
Right.
parts of Asia, South America, Mexico, not just for vacations, right? Because
Right.
when you're a Green Beret, you don't just fight wars. A lot of these countries I lived in, right? I would either have an apartment or a home on the base and a car, and like whatever, and just live there, right? And so you really get to see the world in a totally different dynamic, right? Where you're like,
Right.
like how you start to understand that if Matt Murphy, the old me, had stayed in Memphis, the suburbs right outside of Memphis, Tennessee, right? And found the woman of my dreams and married her.
Right.
And then, went to college in Memphis, or maybe went to college in Alabama, ventured out, got away
Right.
from the house, but I'm here, like, I'm 4 hours away. You know what I mean? And then same culture, same type of people. And then I came back and got a job, raised my kids and got my family. Well, what have I learned about life and people and cultures and dynamics and religions? And what have, I have, the bad thing that's going to happen in my life is somebody passes away, maybe somebody got robbed,
Right.
or
So there's two books that I'm going to give you before you go that I think you're going to devour and find fascinating and mind blowing and offers you different perspectives, both on why we're here, how we got here, and also some of what we were talking about, like what consciousness does in the dream state, and this personal reality which is our personality that we are creating, through our consciousness here on this planet, and how that phenomenon is not only connected to everyone else, but to your family. Anyway, don't let me forget to give you those books. Brother, I think, like, you don't remember it, but I think that when you signed up for this, this was all part of the possibilities of your plan that you agreed to. I think that we all have an idea that's filled with possibilities, and that we agree to that. And yours was never going to be a stay-at-home dad or an accountant. I think that you're of a different ilk. I think a lot of souls have. And one of these books that I'm going to give you talks about this. Like, some people will, whether they incarnate as a man or a woman, they have a proclivity. They want to build with their hands. So that finds a way to manifest itself in their life, whatever their gender, whatever their race, whatever they decide to do in this incarnation. Other people are they're teachers. They're more of the philosophy type, and they'll find a way, even if it's just like, being a fifth grade teacher, to experience that. Maybe in the last life they were, a great, well-known, maybe they were fucking Plato or Aristotle, but it varies, right? And so both books will give you some very interesting and unique perspective, given the life that you've led, given your experience with other people having dreams and you not remembering yours. Like, I think you're gonna love it. And one is a fantastic book that really helped me, I think, understand the true nature of God and what we're doing here, which is really laid out. Like, if you could have a conversation with God, the questions you would ask him are the same questions that this guy asked him. And the answers that he got in this, when he did it, I don't know how else to put it. They were perfect. They certainly weren't coming from him. I know this guy.
I would love to see it.
I'm gonna give before we go. But so you were telling me last night at dinner, you spent a few years. I don't know how much you can talk about this on, but you helped build Libya's intelligence.
Well, we won't say not Libya. It was another African country.
Oh, it was different. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I built a intelligence agency for another country just because of some confidentiality stuff.
Right.
Talk about it, but started the dynamic for them to be able to mitigate threats in their country, right? And so
which is what intelligence was when it was proposed to which president was it? Truman. That's what that was about. And of course, it goes back to England and the Knights Templar. They were kind of always running intelligence, but what became of it was, well, we can spy on our own people. We can use
espionage.
Yeah. I mean, it was born of that, but
100%. Well, everything is information, right? And if you're going to make a decision, especially as a leader, you have to have all of the information possible to make the correct decision. So if you're not conducting espionage and you don't know what the enemy is doing, what weapons they have, how many of them there are, what their battle plans are, where they're going to try to ambush you, so to speak, well then you're going into war blind, right? You have your plan, but you can't plan around. It's what we do in the military is you can call it red cell, blue cell, whatever type framework where. You have people that plan how the good guys are going to fight the fight, and then you have people that plan how the bad guys are going to fight the fight.
Right.
And and you just sharpshoot, and then you develop a plan, and put that together based on all that stuff. So, anyways, intelligence is the aggregation of information and trying to make the most logical deduction from the information that you have, right? And so. Something that doesn't exist in most people's heads anymore, right? It's because now as we've reversed that into here's one piece of information, propaganda, drink the Kool-Aid, and then they manufacture.
Here's another just to make sure you have no idea what you're drinking.
Yeah. Let me throw it off a little bit, but you can see, COVID. I believe, we've always had right and left, right? But I think COVID was really the first time. They got to do the flip. They flipped the switch for propaganda life. Really, our future started in 2020. Where we're headed started in 2020. So what they were able to do in 2020 was create a system where we're all sitting in our house, right? No one can go out, no one can play. And what are we all doing? We're all eating information, right? And they got the opportunity during COVID to create two sides. Not just two sides, but they got to take over social media and create two sides because they got to create the MAGA conservative influencer side, and then they got to create the radical left or the leftist side, right? And so we all went to bubbles, and we picked our bubble based on one thing: who you followed spiraled from that, what you believe spiraled from that. And then the influencers, the people that were going to be at the top of those echo chambers popped up. And so then now you've got the right and you've got the left, right? And so you're basically playing to logical, brain, the left brain, and then, the artistic brain, the right brain, which is funny because, you would think it would be the other way around, right? So now you've got the two different brains broken down into two cultures. So you have liberal and conservative. And at that point, they were able to brainwash the left, right? And I'm not trying to say this in a derogatory way. It's what they did. They were brainwashing them. And that's what people don't understand is the short-sightedness that propaganda and how you're being conditioned, right? Like social media took us from long-form content, from reading books and watching movies and sitting there for 30 minutes and watching the news or an hour to watch one person tell you what's going on. Social media turned us from having attention spans for an entire book or an hour television show into 3 seconds.
Right, 10 seconds.
Yeah. Well, so you have 3 seconds to get someone to
Or
watch something for 10
scroll.
seconds. Right. Yeah. So you have 3 seconds to get them to listen for 10 seconds. And think about that.
Yeah, it's fucking wild.
You went from being able to pay attention to something, society collectively. Now, this isn't everyone. This is the majorities. When I speak on these things, I don't like to give percentages. It's just the majorities, because psychological warfare, propaganda are to create majorities of thought, right? Because then you monopolize that majority, right, into one constraint of thought. So 3 seconds attention, 10 seconds to watch. Now, next thing you know, you have the ability, you have picked 2 sides you can program, and they need 2 sides. Because then you can fracture the sides. And as long as, if you keep the side fighting the side and then the sides fighting each other, they're never going to have enough time to realize that they're being killed by you. They're being fucking led to the slaughter by you.
They did that so well.
I mean, it's insane. We are living in, I'm not going to say the end times. No one knows when those are, so to speak. But we are living in a mass correction and restructuring of life, of humanity. Totally. And we're living in the chapter change.
We are. It's an exciting time to be alive.
Yeah, well, if you make it through.
Yeah. Well, the good thing about the soul is that it's the one thing that we're so afraid of doing, dying physically, is the one thing that your soul's never worried about, because your soul was here long before this body came in.
100%.
And it's going to be here long after. That's the good news. That should bring comfort to anyone who has listened to a lot of near-death experiences and seen loved ones pass, and like, if you take away the mortal fear, you liberate this species, and that's you're talking about hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years of survival programming, but at the same time, we're evolving into, I think, the spiritual creatures, the spiritual beings that we are, that we come into this life and that we leave this life with. I was telling you a story of my Uncle Bill the other day, and how he passed, and in his final moment, he had this huge smile on his face, and he just reached out and then passed from his body.
That's a powerful story, by the way. I really like that.
So
that was good.
And it's a beautiful story, and there's so many like it. There's no shortage of them. I don't think, but religion will tell you that this is your only life, and after this you'll be judged, and just depending on how you did and how well you followed the rules, you're going to either suffer for eternity, or be in bliss for the rest. And I'm like, even God would get bored with that if that was the system. You know what I mean? Like what? Like,
I think, but that's control, man. It's constructs and control.
That's what government is about. And
if you read the Bible, the Bible doesn't really. The Old Testament's a little different, and then the New Testament's written a certain way, but a lot of people don't understand that the Bible is not written in English, first of all, right? And so you think about it. The Bible, the Bibles that are books of the Bible that make up the Old Testament, or for a Jewish person, the Torah, the Tanakh, they were written in Canaanite and different dialects of Canaanite and evolving dialects of Canaanite, right? All in the Canaanite language. And then the New Testament was written exclusively in Koine Greek. You have a little Aramaic, and then you have a little bit of Canaanite in there, for proper nouns, names, towns, and then there was some idioms that you just couldn't say in the Greek that they left in Aramaic, but almost everything in the Old Testament was Canaanite. Now here's the problem, right? With anything that's translated, there's never, like, if you go from let's say Greek to Latin, right? There's going to be a lot of words. I don't know if it's 80% or 90%, 70% that mash up directly. Like, this means cat. This means that thing that's a cat, right? Well, but some words, like verbs, for instance, actions.
Those very important verbs.
Those very important verbs. In a lot of cultures and languages, they meant a lot of things. It depended on the context that you were using the verb, to which direction you would go. So, that just one translation generation, right, from Greek to Latin changed so many things. Not only did it change so many things from the original writings, it changed the name of Jesus, right? Because they did not use the Hebrew. And this is one of the falsehoods that's out there saying, oh, that's not Jesus' real name. It's like, no, Jesus' name in Aramaic, the language that his mother spoke, that he spoke, was Yeshua.
Yeshua.
Right? It's the sound Yeshua. Now, they didn't write it Y-E-S,
Right.
you know, but Yeshua in English makes the sound that
Right.
sounds just like they said it.
Like
in Aramaic.
the way his
The
name.
phonetic way it's said, right? It sounds the same, right? Well, when they changed the the Aramaic to Latin, you couldn't make those sounds.
Right. They didn't have those
so they didn't have letters or that you could put together individually made those sounds. So they changed Yeshua to Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Most people's minds when they hear that are like, that's heresy.
Right.
You know, and you're like, no, that's just like
that's history.
Exactly.
Exactly.
You know, that's what happened.
Right.
And, but most people, they can't wrap their mind around that. Just that simple conversation starts to make people think you're being a heretic.
That's
you're
the
challenging what their pastor said, their mama said.
And they pump the brakes, and their imagination goes blank, and they don't want to hear anymore because they're afraid.
100%, because that's Matt Murphy. That if I had not gone down the path that I did, I probably would think Matt Murphy sitting here is crazy, because that's the Matt version of me that grew up in Collierville, Tennessee, that maybe went away from my adventurous college years,
Right.
and, 2 hours away to Ole Miss, came back to the town, married the girl I was dating in college, and stayed there and lived there, died there. They don't know how to challenge thought. They don't know because they're in that bubble and they're never going to leave it. Same pastors, same parents, same friends, same culture.
Yep.
And that is how propaganda works. And that's why it's so effective, because I can tailor something to make someone believe anything. I guarantee you, if I created a social media page and tried to make people believe in flying space monkeys and that they were actually what created us, I would have a cult and 100,000 followers within 3 months, because I know how to run propaganda campaigns and psychological warfare campaigns. I guarantee you in 3 months, I could get 50 to 100,000 people to believe that flying space monkeys were our creators.
I believe you. Listen, I have no doubt you could.
But that's the scary thing, right?
I know.
So then you got, billions of dollars and all this stuff behind, the propaganda now for the left and to the right. Israel, they literally announced they're running $1 billion Hasbara campaign, which is a propaganda campaign to make people support the nation and the
Which is why every time you open your Facebook page, even though you've clearly made it a preference on your algorithms to be pro-life, pro-Palestinian, anti-genocide, you're bombarded with pro-Israel pages, articles, posts, and I'm just like, man, they are paying out the ass to override the natural algorithms that are in place, because every day I'm like, not interested. Why? It's insulting. It's fraud. It's fake. Another ad. Like the pro-Israel Times, and it's like anti-Semites on the rise, and I'm like, not interested. Tomorrow when I open my page, I'm going to get the same bullshit, even though I've made my preferences clear every fucking day. And that's because they are paying out the ass to propagandize people. And they know that they're going to net a small amount of people. But at this point, they're desperate even for that, because they've lost public opinion completely.
Well, they have. But there's one way to change that, right? And I think that's why I keep talking about on my page. I try not to harp on it, but the way that you change the public opinion is by a drastic action,
Mass casualty event.
Mind if I get a little more?
I got you, bro. You need a mask. You need a Pearl Harbor. You need a Lusitania. You need a 9/11.
9/11 or an October 7th, right? And so I think that's kind of where we're headed, because they always tell you what they're going to do. The rule is they have to tell you. In Satanism, and when you're doing demonic things, there's some type of energy they get out of that by literally saying.
I've heard that a lot.
It's like, if they're going to a child, they don't just the child, they mentally to the child, and they tell them what they're going to do to the child. They get them in fear. They get their blood up. Then they do that horrible act, and then they take their blood out for the adrenochrome. They literally do the same thing to society. It's like the Simpsons. They're like, the Simpsons predicted the future. It's like, no, bro. Simpsons didn't predict the future. The Simpsons is programming you, telling you what they're going to do to you. And there's multiple different ways that they do that, because a lot of people think, oh, this shit just happened.
Right. No.
Or this started when Trump got in office. So this started when Biden got in office. It's like, no. This is cold. This is calculated. This is planned. This is the powerful people in the world with all the money making these plans and saying we're going to do this, and this is the timeline. And they know that some of the stuff they have isn't going to work, but they know where their goal is.
Right.
And they have battle.
And they're patient.
Oh, yeah.
They play the long game. They know presidents are temporary. They're temporary employees, and that's why you saw there was a rabid distaste for Trump in every political circle, essentially. The only people that were for Trump were a few of the politicians and most of the people, the majority of people, but they did a good job of creating a massive hate campaign for him and getting people really emotional about him. And they called that Trump derangement syndrome.
Oh, the TDS.
And now what you're
that's
seeing
2 buckets.
is the opposite. Now you're seeing that Trump derangement syndrome goes both ways, because now there are people who are standing by this man, even as he literally goes against every single promise he made that he was elected on. Everything from making America healthy again to ending wars, promising not to stop new wars, to stop American interventionism, condemning the Bushes, condemning the Clintons for the shit that they did. And he's in office. And I was talking to Chris Crutchfield the other day. I was like, as soon as Silicon Valley lined up behind Trump, we all should have known that the fall had begun.
Oh, 100%.
That should have been a fucking sign.
But that was planned.
Yeah,
it's all planned.
totally.
So the way things work in the oligarchy, the global elite, the politicians are the bottom feeders of the elite. They're their puppets, right? And so they're the ones they use.
Right.
But the politicians, to get into those elite circles and to get to that, they're the puppets. They're the ones that we see.
Right.
And so the politicians are, they're shopped. Right.
Yes.
And they work for certain rich people, right? Because all the global elite don't all get along. I mean, they have a similar agenda, control all of us, but they all have their own shit, their own family
have a different
stuff.
way they want to do it.
They have their own feuds. Everybody who wants to be in charge, who's the boss, they fight internally too,
totally.
because they believe in that. What their belief is the absence of, right? And the fallen sons of God that are, castaways of the absence of God, that are I would say the fallen angels, the fallen sons, and then you have the demons, which I think are the Nephilim spirit, in a way, right? So you have all of these different dynamics of spirit and fallen,
right?
And they all work in those circles because they worship them,
right?
I'm not going to say how I know a lot of things because I like to be alive,
right?
But
I like living.
They worship, not just Lucifer, but it's a multitude of gods that they worship. And according to some people I've talked to, are still interacting with them, right? In ways like, so that's why let me go on tangent, matrix education, how your brain gets trained to see things and then think everything else is not true. Right. Right. So, it's a game, right?
It's literally a game.
100%.
This synchronistically, this 20-second video came up and it has 3 triangle dots. And it has nice little music playing in the background, and around these 3 dots are in the middle of it is a green dot, and they rotate the 3 dots around the green dot, and in the background is a similar pattern, just all of one signature uniformed color, and it's called the Troxler effect. I want to say maybe I'm pronouncing that wrong, but let me double check that.
Yeah.
But so what you do is you stare at the green dot and the orange dots disappear. And I'm like, are they doing this digitally? But no, because the moment I take my eye off the green dot, those orange dots come back into view.
Right.
So but you literally, you lose sight of what's happening around by focusing something on that center object. And they do that to us so much, right? But it's a fascinating little experiment, and it gives you an idea of what happens to people when they fall into a tunnel vision of what's happening, how mesmerizing that is, like whether it be COVID, Iran, whatever it is, that's the divide and conquer is successful because they keep people focused on this. They know that they're going to combat
100%.
And then they can continue to do what they want without anybody being like, hey, wait a minute. The fuck are you guys doing with all our money over there? You know what I mean?
Well, that's why politics exists, man.
Yeah.
I mean, politics is to create those dynamics. Religion is to create those dynamics.
Exactly.
Well, think about it, man. From, one God, God of Abraham, and then the Old Testament, Torah, Tanakh breakdown, but Old Testament, and then from one Jesus, and a New Testament written about the life of Jesus. You now have 41,000, over 41,000 different denominations of Christianity.
Wow.
You have the Bible itself in multiple different forms, in 9,000 different languages. Okay.
My God.
And then you have about, depending on how you look at the translations, you have about 700 to 1,000 different variations of the translations.
Right. That's a
Right.
shit ton.
Right. So off of
I don't know how you
one Koine Greek
Right.
collection of Old Testament, but then you have to go back and think about this, right? Christianity in of itself, which is I think the central religion that's used for the division and the control. Because I am not religious. I have faith. We've talked about this. I follow Jesus. I believe in Jesus. I believe in God, but I don't play the religion game.
Right.
Because that's just man-made bullshit.
It's just
at the end of the day, it's all religion was created by man, written by man,
Absolutely.
and ran by man, and the rules were made by man. This is what God said.
God promised that. No, God doesn't do land deals.
Yeah, God does. Yeah.
Okay? He doesn't have chosen people.
God's
regardless
not
of
in
what your books say, we are all children of God.
Yeah, exactly. He created
take your
all of
book
us.
and shove it up your ass.
Yeah. Well, then that's the problem, man. I think with all
Bullshit.
it's just men trying to rule kingdoms
Further
and
their
have sex
agenda.
with their friends'
right.
wives. Because if you look at every story and translate, it's like
was saying
every
this.
war and every change
Yeah.
was fought over someone either having sex with someone's wife
Right.
or wanting to have sex with someone's wife. And then there was wars.
And from that, spawned the Crusades, essentially.
Literally.
Fucking literally, right?
Literally.
It's wild.
It
man.
wasn't over Jesus.
Yeah,
It was
but
about
God wrote that.
Yeah,
No, not really.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty sure some dude wrote that.
Yeah.
I'm sure it wasn't a woman either. I'm sure it was a man.
But now you have Pete Hegseth,
God.
and the giving sermons, if you will, talking about maybe we fight with the righteous wrath of God
And
the
bringing
righteous
Jesus'
sword.
his name.
Yeah, he's using Jesus to murder.
And even the
people.
soldiers are like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, right. Well,
Like there was like 200 filings of reports of
so
this.
we went to no more wars to fucking religious radical wars within a year and a half.
And it just shows you how desperate they are to try to drum up any kind of moral support for what they're doing, because everyone knows that, except for the people who are like, yeah, fuck it, it's something to do, that we have no reason to do. So that brings me to what I want to, I want to get into with you.
Yeah, please.
What the fuck are we, I don't even know if we're in, I don't believe anymore that we're in Iran for oil. I don't see how, even if like, let me just ask this.
No.
Given your unique perspective and, insight into the way intelligence gathering works, into the way these operations work, you have been boots on the ground, in these Gulf states and in the Middle East. What is the best and worst case scenario of what's going on in Iran right now? What is Trump like? What the fuck are we doing there? Because we're obviously not. We're not there for oil. Oil prices are going up. Tankers are getting killed. We're not facilitating what people think. Well, he's got to secure the oil. It's ours anyway. I'm like,
I can break it down.
Break it down.
I'll break it down, but here's where we got to start. Because this is the most important part to remember, right? You have the spiritual realm, what people believe in faith, who they worship, and then what their agenda is. And then you have the physical realm, the things they utilize to control us, right? So oil and religion are the two ways they have always manipulated society: energy and God. And pick your God, or pick whatever they create. But that's the manipulation. So you have spiritual goals, then you have religion and oil, and or whatever commodity you can control that controls everything. Which now everything relies on oil, not just the gas in your car, but pretty much all of your plastics, all of your pharmaceuticals. Think of Rockefeller. Everything relies on oil. Exactly. So the oil, so the control of oil, you control the world. Well, guess what else relies on oil? Our dollar, the U.S. currency.
Exactly.
It's the only thing that gives our currency value. So there's multiple truths right here, and I'm going to do my best to break this down in a way where it's a logical flow. So the people that run the world believe they worship the entity that's antithesis to God, right? They believe there's multiple entities. You can call them the fallen angels. You can call them the watchers, the sons of God that were cast away, removed from the light, removed from His presence, right? Because when you're in hell, you're just removed from God's presence.
Yeah,
right?
separate.
So you're separated. So the beings that God created that were higher than us, smarter, whatever than us, they're the beings that were stuck here, right? And Tim Burchett does a great talk about how they live under the earth, and we track their craft moving in the water and stuff, and that we call these demons and these beings aliens,
Right.
Right.
Well, some people do.
Well,
Yeah.
some people do, right? But angels and demons, right? The good team and the bad
Right.
team, or the with God of God. So if you look at the story, this is what they believe, because I've been pitched in ways, right? They believe that this guy's going to win, that this group
Is going to
absent from God can win, and that's through the creation of technology.
Right.
So they reverse engineered the demonic or the fallen technology, the craft, the things they use. And then so you look at artificial intelligence, the 5 now turning into 6G.
Right.
You look at all the systemic like ways of communication, control, propaganda, psychological warfare, brainwashing, and then the roads, if you will, the internet, now 5, 6G, that get this information to you. So the God, the creator, created everything. So what they're doing is they're reverse engineering, if you will, creation to destroy God's creation, right, to the creator's creation. And they're utilizing all the things inside of what he was created to create mechanisms of technological control.
which are also going to act to separate people from their own DNA, their own humanity, and their own divine connection.
Well, that's all they're after. So we got to look at that
transhumanist agenda.
Transhumanism, right? It's transhumanism, but what it is that initial creation where God created Adam, and he took the rib, not the rib, he split the DNA and put the other half in Eve. So if we want to procreate and continue humanity, two men and women come together, right? Connect the DNA strands, you make a baby. Right?
What's happening to fertility?
100%, right? Why are they killing fertility?
Right.
We are being exterminated because there's a transhumanism play, there's the destruction of God's creation, and then there's the middle people, right? The middlemen that want to control the world.
Right.
They're probably getting promised all kinds of things by the fallen or the absent of God controllers, whatever you want to call them, Lucifer, demons, Satan, whatever. Pick your flavor. For this talk, we'll just call them the devil, right? The entity of the devil, if you will.
Right.
So you have the synagogue of Satan, you have then everyone else, right? So they want global control and destroy God's creation. We talked about all the Epstein was doing all the, eugenics and things to try to, make more Epsteins and alter DNA.
Yeah.
So anyways, man, so that's where that goes.
Right.
And people have to understand that that's very real. And if you don't understand that that's real,
I think more and more people are understanding that. I don't know if they understand the scope of it, but again, so...
Tied into Ren, right?
Yeah, what the fuck?
Well, you have to understand all this to understand this. So God had his chosen people, and he exiled them, back in 590.
Allegedly, according to this.
This book,
texts,
right? Yeah. So 590 to 5, but this is what they believe.
Yeah.
If people have a lot of beliefs now, a lot of constructs, but that doesn't matter what you believe or I believe.
No.
All that matters is what they believe.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then their beliefs allow them to justify their actions.
100%. And this has nothing to do. Oil's a mechanism of control. Religion's a mechanism of control. This is what they believe, right? And so I'm not saying they're wrong in ways because it is good versus evil, but there's levels. So God, if you look at the Ezekiel Old Testament, God exiled the former chosen, the Israelites, from the promised lands, told them never to return until he returns.
Right.
They wandered the earth that I planned to call, or the country to call their own, right? Well, so if you're the synagogue of Satan, if you're working for the bad guys, well, then everything you're going to do is in the antithesis of God, destroy God's creation. Right. Well, also you're going to defy God's order. So they created Israel as a defiance to God, right? So building the third temple, Jesus was the third temple in religion, where you look at him coming, his body, his sacrifice, that was the temple, the sacrifice, and that everybody that chooses to follow Jesus, Son of God, all that type of stuff will be forgiven through repentance, forgiveness, grace, and love, blah, 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 right? Well, what they believe, and this is important, very important, is that they have to do three things for end times prophecy. The first thing is they believe they have to sacrifice the perfect red heifer. Right. So they already did one in August. I don't know if they have another one coming up. That's super secret.
Blood rituals.
It's Zionist, stuff. But they've already publicly sacrificed one red heifer. The ashes of this red heifer were mixed with the water, and they were shipped to Jews all over the world. Right. Or not Jews. Excuse me. Zionists that were in that club that call themselves Jewish all over the world. Very, very, very big different. And that was a cleansing ritual, because if you look at Ezekiel, they have to be cleansed. Right? Okay. So then the second part is they have to then take back greater Israel,
Right.
which is the biblical lands of Canaan, which encompasses.
You can see it on the uniform of every IDF agent. It's
100%.
You know, it's a massive expansion of what is now Israel, even given the amount of illegal and criminal land theft that they've been perpetrating since 1949.
Yeah, this started a while ago. It didn't just start.
Absolutely.
But they had to have, like, again, the mechanisms out, the phones out, the ability to propaganda, the ability to brainwash, the ability to have
and they got the entire nation of Israel for the most part. I don't want to say the entire, but everyone is forced into military service. So
Not everyone. There's a certain sect of Jews that make up about 30-40% of the population that do not have to serve.
Oh, they don't?
Yeah,
Okay.
but everyone else has to join the military.
Right.
So there's a Orthodox version of Judaism there.
Yeah.
That's like, no, we don't agree with Israel or Zionism.
yeah, they're the ones often getting pummeled by the IDF in the streets.
Well, you got to remember this too. The Jews are being manipulated just as much as we're being manipulated.
That was my next statement.
Yeah, yeah. So inside of Judaism, let me not tangent. Let me talk the big piece, and I'll tell you this tangent because it's very important to understand on this too. So they have to go back and they have to create greater Israel, the biblical lands of Canaan, the promised lands. They believe they have to secure them in Zionist prophecy, satanic prophecy
For their Messiah.
right? Because Christians and
we believe
people
our
follow
Messiah,
Jesus,
yeah.
He's here. He's already come. He's already died before he rose again, and then he's going to come back or something. One day. Well, on their side, they believe they have to bring back the real Messiah because in their book, the Talmud, Jesus is burning in a cauldron of feces for being a heretic.
That's what the
He's
Talmud
punished.
says.
Yeah,
Just
literally.
By the way.
Yeah. It says a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, it says a lot of other
I
heinous.
don't want to get your podcast
No,
canceled.
we've already said
But you can go
too
to
much.
my page
Yeah.
and seize verses from the Talmud about certain things. And
If you want to get in trouble on social media, just go ahead and read the Talmud out loud, okay?
Yeah.
Go for it. See what happens to you.
Yeah.
Whatever, and understand that is a partner book that is used by almost all practicing Jews at some point in their education. And it says the most heinous and atrocious things, not just about Jesus, but about people who are not Jewish.
Well, and children.
And children, it is one of the most heinous books.
It's their book of law.
And the fact that the book has not been outright condemned and this is why there's a problem with stereotyping and people saying, well, it's all of them, because books like this should be, it should be, what's the word? When they declare something no longer a part of their religion, it should not be. It's massively insulting. It's massively racist. It's atrocious. It's like some of the worst shit you could ever read. Like I said,
well, that's why they propaganda all day and say Islam's bad, Muslims are bad.
Right.
They're the most evil.
There's
It's
nothing in Islam anything like
anywhere
that.
near
No.
as bad as this book. It is the most evil book next to the book of Satan,
Right.
in the world. So, you can have with a girl one day older than.
That's
And before that,
and it's
too.
okay it's not offensive to God.
Well, she must
according to
be.
them.
She must not be one of them.
Yeah, she can't. She has to be.
You can only do it to a goy, a non-Jew.
Right.
You can have the non-Jew boy up until he's because he's not a man yet. So you're not sinning and he's not sinning.
Right.
He should enjoy it.
And that's not offensive to God. So don't worry about it if you do it.
I've got a
That's
video
what
on
the
my
book says.
page where you can see a rabbi talking about is it bad if you make the girl when you have with her? I'm not kidding. This is the rabbi reading the Talmud.
Right.
So I'm just saying, and then Christians are like God's chosen people, and you're like, man, y'all are
Idiots.
Yeah, it's tough, man.
Excuse my French.
I know. We might have to put this whole podcast. I'm just saying.
You took the thought right out of my head.
I know, but here's the other part, brother. Is so with Iran, they have to take back Greater Israel,
Yeah.
right? And then the next part is they have to rebuild the third temple. So people that have read the Bible, especially Old Testament, Solomon's first and second temple,
Right.
Were built in one spot in Jerusalem. Well, guess what's there now? The
Mosque.
Al-Aqsa Mosque, right? Which is 1,600-year-old mosque, 1,600 years old, a mosque that is, one of the holiest sites in Islam.
And what did Netanyahu just say?
Yeah.
They're targeting our holy sites. They're targeting the mosque. We're like, we know who's targeting the mosque.
We know exactly what you're doing. Yeah,
asshole.
They're about to 9/11 that mosque.
No shit.
Yeah, and then you're going to see them attempt to rebuild the third temple because these are the three things that have to happen in Zionist Jewish prophecy. This is not Jewish prophecy. Now, Jewish prophecy parallels the coming, but they take the third temple out of context because Jesus was the third temple, but since they denied Jesus, they believe they had to build this third temple for the Messiah to come, but the temple and the Messiah have already come, right? And so their denial is turning into something the whole world's going to feel, and we're starting to feel it right now.
That's right.
You know, so this is where Iran comes in. So if you go back to the creation of Israel, right? I'm telling a long story to get here, but I think just for people to step outside of their framework. So there was a man named Moses Hess in 1862. He wrote a book called Rome and Jerusalem. And in this book, it says that the Jewish people should become separatist and then remove themselves from every other race and every other religion and country, and then all move to Palestine.
Right.
So he was the first one to create Zionism.
Even before Herzl?
Yeah. So Moses Hess coined Zionism. A lot of people don't know this. Now, here's why a lot of people don't know this. Because in Moses' book, he says a bunch of other stuff too. Right. He says that Zionists have to eradicate the white and Aryan race. Right. He's believed all white people need to be destroyed. And then he also said Christianity was a death cult. In Christianity, Christians need to be destroyed. Right. So the guy who created Zionism and the concept for Jews to move to Palestine, which never existed before 1862, also wanted to kill all white people and kill all Christians. Yeah, weird. Yeah. Kind of like happening. But anyways. Right. So Theodore Herzl was a protege of Moses Hess. But before you have Herzl in Israel, you have the Bolshevik Revolution, right? Because right around like end of World War I, you have the Balfour Agreement where they drew the lines in the sand and created the Middle East. Well, you also simultaneously had, the Bolshevik Revolution, killing of the the royal family, the Anastasia story came out of that, and then you have the Bolshevik Revolution. Well, guess what? Moses Hess's best friend when he wrote Rome and Jerusalem was Karl Marx. Right?
Yep.
Right? So, Communist Manifesto was 1848, I think. Don't hold me to that. Somewhere around before Rome and Jerusalem.
Right.
So Communist Manifesto comes out where Karl Marx wrote communism, the creation of communism. Moses and Karl Marx were both the sons of what? Talmudic rabbis.
Right.
So the Talmud is not the Torah. It's not the Tanakh. It's a conglomeration of some stuff from the Torah and the Talmud, the Torah and the Tanakh, but it's a lot of the other stuff, the Baal worship, the Babylonian teachings, the child.
Rituals,
they hide, like the one you get to read ain't the whole thing. I'm just going to leave it at that. Right. But so it's where the other gods are acknowledged too in a lot of the Talmud. And then you have the Kabbalah. We won't even go down that road.
Right.
But so in this process, they do the Bolshevik Revolution. 30 to 60 million Christians, white Christians in Russia were slaughtered. Right. It was the largest genocide that we know of in human history. Right. So they've already tried this crap once. Right. So they've like the things that people believe are happening right now with the depopulation and all this kind of stuff. They've already tried it once. Right. I mean, they just erased it from history because they don't teach about it in school.
They're the ones in charge of the books. Yeah.
100%. Right. So your Bolshevik Revolution doesn't work out. Then you have the whole thing. Same time, Lord Rothschild is gifted Israel, right? So the white Jewish settlers moved to Israel, occupy Israel. 3 militias, Lehi, Ergon, and Haganah, were established. And 2 of the militias, let me digress. They started killing everyone. Right. Like securing the land that they occupied that was gifted to Lord Rothschild, right?
Yeah, well, signed over to him due to his loans. Because England was history lesson. England was defeated. The Germans had U-boats, and the Royal Armada never stood a chance. So the war was over within a year, with no shots ever being even fired on German soil. And what happened was Britain was being forced to capitulate, and Germany was being very fucking cool about it. Germany offered Britain a status quo treaty, which said, Can we go back to the way things were before you all started this now? Yeah. Everybody cool now? And they were going to sign, and then you had German Zionists that, representing the Rothschilds saw their opportunity. Saw their opportunity to try to maneuver to do something they've been working towards for decades.
100%.
And they came in and they said, listen, you don't have to capitulate like this. You don't have to accept these terms. We'll rebuild your armada. We'll get you plans. You can build your own U-boats. We'll get America to come into this war for you. And they were like, how are you going to do that? America was pro-Germany. Yeah. Pretty all the way through. they said, leave that to us. And they had their assets in the media. They knew exactly what they were going to go about trying to do. It took them a little while, but and they had to get J.P. Morgan involved and convert the Lusitania into a cruise vessel and ship it right to where, Germany had sent a telegram that said, listen, because they took the deal. To finish the story, and then I'll circle back. They said, if we do all that, we'll give you the money, we'll float your economy, rebuild your armada, and we'll get America to come into the war. And if you win, 100%. All we want is Palestine. And Lord Balfour said, sure, and they fucking signed. That's the Balfour.
About 100%. Well,
that's the agreement, right? And they succeeded. What did they do? Yeah. They used their. And I went back and I read these headlines, and it's so funny because if you can replace the word Hamas from October 7th with the word Germany, and it's the same fucking headlines that they used to instigate World War I. The propaganda began, Germany. I was like the same exact playbook.
They've done it over and over and over again because they know what appeals to the human domain. And propaganda works because human nature never changed. You can tell people generationally the same shit. Right. All you do is change the label, change the name, point at a different person because human nature never changes, and you're going to be able to mass manipulate a group. That's what the devil does. Right. The only way you don't fall into manipulation is you have, in my opinion, this is me, as a connection and belief in Jesus, and that you understand the order of things, and having that light, in my opinion, is how you don't fall for it. But that's the thing. Most Americans have no clue. They weren't taught about that in their history books because Mossad controlled the history books. But
it all seems random. They can't connect the dots. So I think once you find out, you need a spiritual fortitude. Whether that is a connection to Jesus, a connection to God, an understanding that Jesus is within you. You need that strength because things become much more transparent to you. But the problem is the miseducation of every country, but America in particular. It's impossible for them to connect the dots because they don't have an inkling of the true history of this country. So when you don't know the players, you don't understand the game that's being played. You can't dissect the plays, so it all looks like what the fuck. It's like, well, I don't know what I'm watching. This seems to be happening at random.
Exactly,
but it ain't.
But this is why you have to tell the story because you were segue real quick because a lot of people get chopped up on this one. But in 1948, the most infamous spy in Mossad history, Robert Maxwell, started a company called Maxwell Publishing.
That's right.
And Maxwell Publishing owned McGraw Hill, Pergamon Press, and there's another one I'm forgetting right now. I'll think of it in a second. But all the publishing companies that made all the school books were controlled and developed and ran by the Israeli Mossad. So they removed the Bolshevik Revolution from American education, completely removed that revolution from American education. They also removed how Israel got there from American education. Totally. No one was taught about the Balfour Agreement. No one was taught about how the Middle East was created. No one in America was taught about any of these things.
No, I know.
So when they hear it now, and that's why I went on this tangent because it's so important. This is the truth because you can go find this. Right. You can go look it up. You can find the truth. It just wasn't in your child construct of the historical timeline of the world.
Far from it,
they altered the timeline of the world. So when you hear this now, you're like, just go look it up. That's why I tell everybody on my page, if you think I'm crazy, go Google it.
I tell people all the time, like World War I and World War II were fought at the behest of Zionists.
100%. Every war. Since
that's right. I was like, until you understand that, it's hard for you to understand what the fuck is going on right now with America and Israel.
But they're not just Zionists, right? They use Zionism as a construct.
Exactly. It is. It's a political movement.
100%. Well, it's a satanic movement and with a political party that then goes over the people and they hide behind Jews because there's that disconnect there.
Right. They get the people like in Israel to fervently believe this bullshit that they're selling, that they are God's chosen people, that God promised them the land, and they need that.
You're born in Israel. Yeah. I mean, this is why it works. It's just human nature. I don't blame the Israelis.
No,
it's human nature. From the second they're able to talk, you're God's chosen.
And people hate you because of it.
And they hate you.
They'll want to hurt you.
So exactly. So it turns them into monsters.
Right.
They literally brainwash their own people to be monsters.
Into dehumanizing Arabs, and even
Well, they look
you
like
know,
because they're raised that they're better
right.
than all of us.
That's
That they can
a
rape
belief
us,
system.
They can kill us. They are raised better. That's Zionism.
only way you
Israeli.
can do what they do.
Jews aren't raised like that.
No.
And Zionists give Jews a bad name, just like white supremacists a lot of times give Christians a bad name, or radical Muslims give Islamic people a bad name. The majority of people in these religions are good people.
Right.
They just want you and me. They want to have a wife and have kids. One
Right.
day I'll figure out how to do it right. But my point is,
Right.
it's like they just want to have a normal, happy,
Existence,
healthy
yeah.
existence, right? So anyways, digress. But so with that whole process and the creation of Israel, Israel was literally created by terrorists.
Right.
The founder of Israel, David Ben Gurion, the first prime minister, who was atheist, by the way, did not believe in God.
Yeah.
Right?
So was Herzl.
Right. Yeah. Herzl was atheist too, but they're Zion.
Why would somebody who doesn't believe in God think that God's chosen people need a land?
Because that's a lie they told other people.
Yeah,
Just like the
exactly.
pastor in church manipulates his church with the religion or the doctrine
Yeah.
or the denomination.
And
or
if
the
you're
BS.
not donating,
Yeah.
God's going to be very upset with
Yes,
you.
God said,
right.
"Tithe to me."
Repent.
Yeah, or
Be
you'll
afraid.
burn into the hellfire. And you don't want to burn in that hellfire if you
Make
don't
sure you
give
tell
me
your
money.
family to donate.
Yeah. $7.99.
seriously,
Because I
exactly.
needed. God said I need a private jet because,
Right.
you know. Anyways, I can't fly on a plane with
Right.
all those demons. You know, and it's just like, man. Anyways, I know, tangent. So, you know, religion sucks, but you know, it's faith is great, right? And an
is
understanding of reality,
Spirituality, belief. Yeah.
right, man. So you know, through this whole thing, you really have to go back and look at from the beginning of Israel, how they got their tentacles out in the world and how they did this. Well, simultaneously, you know, right around the time of the right around the time of the creation of the gifting of Israel
Right.
to Lord Rothschild, you have the creation of the U.S. Federal Reserve.
Right. It's
This
almost
is the most
almost
important.
Same year, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
1914, I think, right?
13, yeah, 1913, Christmas Eve, 1913, I believe,
Wow,
right?
yeah.
It could be off a day or two,
No,
right
yeah.
around there. And so when the Federal Reserve was created, and a lot of Americans don't know this, it is not controlled by America.
No.
It's not controlled by America. It is a global bank and made up of mostly Zionist bankers, J.P. Morgan, Chase, Lord Rothschild, like the
Right.
guy, like you know, the
Rockefellers.
guy who funded communism.
Lafayette's,
Right, yeah, the Rockefellers,
Warburgs.
the big families we ain't in, right?
Right.
You know, the powerful
Families that had enough money combined to rival what the United States Treasury had.
100%.
you know.
Well, and then they took it over.
Right.
Right.
And they were and their pitch was, let us handle your money. Then you won't have to worry about, you know, you'll never have to worry about inflation. You'll always have money whenever you want. Let us take care of it. They had no idea what they were conned, you know, and then they used propaganda to convince Congress that this was the bankers. This was going to be great. It's going to fuck make the bankers stay in line. And of course, before you know it, we're in exactly the situation we started this country to get away from. You know,
100%. But this is where Americans have to understand, because this plays into this event too.
Right.
This is the last part Americans have to understand. When the Federal Reserve was created, we just gave a monopoly of Zionist bankers control of not just the U.S. dollar, the ability to control everything,
Right.
not just here in America, but in the world.
Right.
Because once you control the money,
right.
you know, it's like Scarface, right? You know, you get the money, then you get the power,
Right.
then you get the respect. Well, if you're looking at Zionist bankers, what are you doing at that point? You're slowly through lobbying groups taking over politics left and right.
Absolutely.
You're slowly through the political groups appointing the leaders in the bureaucracies.
Right.
So you're taking over every government entity. And then once you put a leader in, you're only putting like-minded ideologies in each bureaucracy. So from HHS to DHS to, you know, the U.S. Department of Education.
Right.
Monopolized mostly by what?
Centralized
Zionist
everything. Right.
dual citizens of Israel.
Right.
That's the truth, even to today.
Right.
And so then you have AIPAC, the largest funding group in politics, left and to the right. So when they took over the Federal Reserve, they took over America. Well, then after that, they took over the majority of corporations are owned by Zionists or a majority-controlled board. You have most of the institutions in media, in Hollywood, in mainstream music,
Right.
private equity firms, BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. They have monopolized the control of our country, and those groups have monopolized industry
Right.
in our country. So when people say Jews control everything, no. Jews do not control everything. Zionists control everything. Synagogue of Satan people that have a world globalization agenda control everything.
That are not truly Jewish.
They're not truly. They hide behind Jews and say they're Jewish. They're not Jewish.
Exactly.
Right. And that's what I want people to really understand. I don't hate Jews. I love Jews. My stepdad was a Jew. I was raised by a Jew. Yeah. I went to synagogue. I went to church. I went to Jewish community center and played basketball. I love the Jewish people.
Right.
I hate Zionists, and the only reason I hate them is because they hate me.
Right.
And I still pray for them too.
Right.
But and how I look at life. But my point is, man, is once that happened, that started a time clock because now you don't just control the money, you don't just control the politicians and the bureaucracy and then the economy. You control the largest military in the world.
The largest military empire force the world's ever seen.
What has America done since 1913? World War I, World War II, and 9/11, invasion, Vietnam. All we have done is fight Israel and Zionism's wars to further push their agenda down the road. And Jordan Peterson does a really good talk about this when he talks. And I'm not talking about liking Jordan Peterson. I think he's on their team. But he does a good talk about how you can change any man. Right. Or just change society collectively. And so he uses a man on a road as an example. So a man standing on a road with his morals and his values and his principles, right? And he's, and you want to push him down the road to get him to where you want him to go, whether that's whatever that end goal is. We'll say it's to change his faith or make him believe in something or fight for something or stand for something, to just push him out of everything that he's been taught, he's been told, his morals, his values, his religion, his standing, his culture.
How do you do that?
Right. Yeah. Well, here you start to do things to push him down the road because most people are nice. Right. A lot of people are kind. And so you can push them down a road a little bit by slowly starting to all right, we're going to, let's say, for instance, we're changing the moral of, the sexes, and whether boy and a girl, right? We slowly start to talk about different transgenderism, and you slowly start to talk about, how, boys can be girls and boys can be boys, and sexuality is a choice and a concept.
Slowly over time.
It's slowly over time. But when you get to that point and when you're about to cut a kid's off, right? I'm sorry, or remove a to make them a girl, right? Well, guess what? That person's about to start to fight. Now he's about to protest. So if you go and you say, hey, I'm going to do an operation and whatever, and you're like, oh no, and you but here's the thing. The second he's about to punch you, you stop. Right. Right. Now you're not going back down the road. You're not letting him go back to where he was. Right. Because now society, the man has been subconsciously programmed with, transgenderism, and you can you choose your sex and do these things. Well, you just stand there. Right. And eventually a good, kind man or society is going to go back to just doing what society does, enjoying their life, distracted, watching their football games or, watching their goy slop on Netflix, just doing all those things. Well, then what do?
That's when you
start pushing a little bit more, right? You start pushing a little bit more. And then you get to the point where you're about to cut a off, and that man's about to fight you, and he's about to lose his mind. But he's not as angry as he was last time. He's not as violent as he was last time. At this point, he's been subconsciously programmed. So now he's going to quicker go back to watching his football and watching his Netflix shows and living a good life and doing all the things. And then the next time you get to the point where you're about to chop off, he's like, it's just, and now you've just taken a man, a Christian, let's say a Christian religion man who has his morals and his values and believes there's two sexes that God created, blah, blah, blah. So my point is that that's what Israel has done to the world. Zionism has done to the world. They've changed religion, 1913 Scofield Bible from there that created Judeo-Christian Zionism, all that. So they've gotten us to the point to where they make this move today because they believe in this end-time prophecy, manifest destiny plan. We're living in it. Right. Okay? It started with 9/11. 9/11 was the event that when they blew up those towers, right? And we all know about the dancing Israelis, Israeli art students, the Zionist owner of the buildings who took the insurance policy out, and not one Jew went to work that day. Right. Weird, right?
Totally coincidence.
So, and then what do? Israeli Mossad fed the Bush administration the intelligence about the weapons of mass destruction. So now we're not just hunting bin Laden. Israeli intelligence said we got weapons of mass destruction that we never found. We invaded Iraq. And that started a 20-year war in the Middle East that destabilized the Middle East. We destroyed the tanks,
Racks up
the planes,
massive debt,
massive debt.
trillions and trillions in debt. So that pays.
So now they own us. Now
right.
now the Federal Reserve has us by the balls with debt. At the same time, we just went into Iraq and destroyed the largest military in the Middle East with the U.S.'s military. Right. We took their oil. We marginalized their country. We recreated terrorist groups and factions. Now what are they doing? Just like they're doing to us with politics. Through Sunni and Shia Islam and through all these levels, they're fighting each other.
Right. That's exactly what they want.
And so here we got Democrats and Republicans and all the subsects fighting each other. Well, now we got them fighting and killing each other, right? Well, then Syria. Right? Assad, he could have done some stuff.
Right.
So what do? We slowly whittle away at Assad regime with a military, ISIS, right? And then you have the Arab Spring where Muammar Gaddafi is getting drug out of his house and murdered by his own people. And you slowly start to topple these dictators throughout the North Africa, Islamic world, and throughout the Middle East, right? Anyone who could stand in your way.
Right.
And now because you control the banks, the Federal Reserve and the European banks, now you can marginalize the Middle Eastern countries that aren't a threat, like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE. They're the epitome of Western culture now. They've literally taken their Islam away with the love of money, the idolization. The love of money is the root of all evil. So now they've got these huge skyscrapers and Ferraris and gold and all the Russian hookers they could ever want.
They're like, well, why don't they step up for the Palestinian people? I was like, because they're in league with the fucking bankers.
They're in bed with the bankers.
Exactly. And the bankers are the oil tycoons.
And the bankers got them because now these countries don't have militaries.
No.
The U.S. military said they would protect
we'll take
them.
care of you.
So you just build
what's happening to them now? They're
skyscrapers
getting
and
the
your
shit bombed out of
Ferraris
them.
and your Gucci bags and your Louis Vuitton and just live the life. So now they brainwash all these countries that could have done. So half the countries they destroyed that they couldn't brainwash.
The other ones they basically.
The other half they brainwashed with money, materialism, and false idols. So then you look at Iran and Turkey. These are the last two countries left that can stand in Israel's way, that have formidable militaries. They say, I had to say all this so everybody understands where this goes. Right. This war in Iran didn't start a few weeks ago.
No.
It started in the 1800s because their whole goal was globalization taking over the world. Right. So Iran is the last formidable country. Iran's got a hell of a military.
They got a huge swath of land. They have remained intact for thousands of years. They have not fallen to the Rothschild debt enslavement system. You know that Iran is a bastion of everything that they cannot have. You know, and I think that's another reason why it's been target numero uno since fucking. For a long time, because you can't have a country, you know, Lincoln, Kennedy, they were like, let's start printing. Let's reinvigorate the United States Treasury. Let's print our own money. There's a fucking idea. Our Constitution says that we can do this. We could even loan it to ourselves without interest. What a fucking idea.
Right? It's how you brainwash.
Let's start printing our own money just to have some. What happened to Lincoln? What happened to Kennedy? You know, I mean, they were both taken out. They were for 1,000 reasons, but one of the bigger ones, in my opinion, certainly with Kennedy, was his order to start to print our own U.S. Treasury backed money.
Oh, that would have destroyed their whole plan.
And, I mean, he was dead within a week, and that's the first thing that Johnson did. Among other things, is repeal that.
Oh, you have to, because that would just destroy the Zionist stranglehold, not just on America, but the world.
And every country that we, you know, Gaddafi, all of these coups, this was a threat to the hegemony of this global centralized fiat Ponzi scheme that is, you know, part of.
And it's stuff I knew Gaddafi's son safe, you know, and. I wouldn't call him a close friend, but we were cool, you know. And he just got killed about a month or two ago.
Oh, he did. Wow.
Yeah. He got assassinated because he was trying to be the next president of Libya. They can't let that happen.
No.
You know, they have to have their puppet in there, and they're not. You know.
And Gaddafi was another one.
You killed my dad. He ain't gonna go in there and. No. You know, Gaddafi was probably
he called shit to. I listened to that speech he gave to the UN. I loved listening to
Gaddafi. Oh
yeah.
You know what I mean? That's why they killed him, because he didn't play ball with the Zionists.
He called it the way he actually said what was actually happening.
Yeah, if you don't play ball with the Zionists and you're a leader, you get killed or you get taken out, like Maduro taken out. Gaddafi killed.
So is
Bashar
that
Assad
why
killed.
Trump is bombing
Saddam
Iran?
Hussein? 100%. Saddam Hussein killed. The Ayatollah's not playing ball with Zionists.
Right.
They're Muslim. They're Islamic. 95% of Iran is Shia Muslim.
Right.
So when they bombed or Israel, took out the Ayatollah day one, you didn't just kill the leader of that country, you killed the religious cleric of that country.
Right.
That's like that's like the Muslims killing Billy Graham.
They said that he absolutely martyred himself. He went to a place he knew they would.
Well, he did that to bring his people together.
That's right.
See, here's the lies that people in America don't understand. He's not a god to Muslims, but he's almost like he's lower than prophet status.
Right.
You just killed a religious
almost
leader.
like the Pope, maybe.
Literally like a pope.
Yeah.
He's like a pope plus in charge of the country. So man, I'm just telling you right now, what we did was dumb.
Right.
Because what you're seeing now is but it was intentional. They need this to happen.
Right.
So let me backtrack just a second because we'll get to this point. Okay. So now you have to destroy the Iranian military in order for Israel to take Greater Israel.
Right.
So what's Trump doing right now and bragging about every day?
Yeah.
I took out their navy. I'm blowing up all their tanks. I'm
obliterating.
I'm obliterating their military.
Right.
He's obliterating their military, so Israel has no resistance when they take Greater Israel.
Right.
And because that Greater Israel is about a third, half of Iraq, to include Babylon. Mm-hmm. It's most of Syria, splits of Syria in half almost, all of Lebanon, which they're bombing and taking over as we speak, and no one's saying a word about.
Of course not.
And then most of Jordan, not all of Jordan, northern parts of Saudi Arabia, which are just desert. They'll give that back. There's no fighting because they got Saudi Arabia, all the Ferraris and stuff. And then Egypt, Nile, east. Right. Yeah, that's Greater Israel.
Right.
So they have to take that back to bring the Jewish Messiah back, which is part of globalization. So anyways, so they're literally destroying Iran's military right now. So they don't care how many people die in this battle. Right. They don't care how much oil goes up because this is the Zionist Israeli war. Yeah. It's about Greater Israel. That's it. That's all. They don't give a shit what happens to oil. They don't care how many American soldiers die. They don't care what happens to the Iranian people at all because the goal is Greater Israel, and they want to depopulate us anyways, right? So
exactly, and Israel could care less what happens to our military. The weaker we are, the easier it is for them to become the global power they've dreamed of becoming.
Where they're, you got to remember,
they're using us like they use everything.
The Zionists have hated Babylon since the exile. Yeah. Right? Rome, and like when they look at us like the Rome Babylon thing, where they're using the goy to destroy their life and made them wander the earth, what a country called their own. They're now using the goy, the white boys, the black boys, the Arab boys, the Mexican boys. They're literally sending them to die in war on their behalf. That's literally.
And they said that's an honor.
They do.
Yeah.
It's an honor to die for us because we're chosen people.
Right.
You're finally doing your God.
What a fucking bunch of BS. What a belief system.
They believe this though, man. They're raised to believe this.
And that's the thing.
But Americans don't see it because we're brainwashed with propaganda. And it's like, go Trump. And if you're against it, you've got TDS.
Right.
Bro, where?
He's doing good. I'm like, the Iranians seem...
what?
The Iranians... Like, why don't you watch a documentary? Watch someone who has gone and spent time in Iran. The Iranian people are, this one of my favorite travel vloggers, one of his top 5 places to go, and this dude's been to like 235 countries. He loves going to Iran, and he makes these documentaries about it. He's like, the Iranian people, I'm telling you, he's like, and he's a kind of a ginger American. It's shocking how kind and compassionate the Iranian people are to him wherever he goes. And he begins the documentary. He's like, I know that Iran has its problems, most of which were
it's not perfect,
caused by. But he said, but wherever I go in Iran, I've never met a more welcoming people. That life in Iran was fine. What was it ideal as far as what we consider to be liberal democracy? Probably not. But in most parts of Iran, which is a huge country,
Iran's a thriving
they
country.
were living fucking happy lives,
just like the West. Women didn't have to cover their heads in a lot of parts. Like there was, more It's just like the sliding scale of anything, right? You have
Right,
some cities that
exactly.
are horrible in crime. You have some cities that are
Right.
you can walk down the street with your wife at 3 a.m. at night and you're gonna be fine. You know, yes, every country's got their dynamics and their problems. But Iran overall had the fastest growing Christian population in the world. They had a very thriving and healthy and safe Jewish community, believe it or
they
not.
did, yeah.
And then they had a majority Shia Muslim, but they also had some Sunni there.
Right.
There was, you know, and obviously the Sunnis and the Shias have always had beef,
Right.
but no one was getting murdered. You know,
Right.
there would
Unlike
be some,
a lot of places.
You know, there'd be maybe like in a city that had a very strong, very conservative, or very almost what would people call Sharia law, radical version of Islam. Maybe something would happen to a girl there, and then everyone in the world's like,
Did you see what they're doing?
but no, but that's not like all the country. I mean, do you see what happens to kids in Chicago?
Right, yeah.
I mean, or like we're off here.
Yeah.
But legally doing it. I mean, so, and we're like, look at what they did to that woman. Well, it's like, we're just slopping it, eating in our mouths. We're not doing anything to stop it. No one cares. And you're more worried about it. And I'm not saying it's okay or saying it's not wrong.
Right, one
but we're
woman
being
who-
collectively mass.
Right.
And you're worried about a girl in Iran.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's like your children are fat, they're unhealthy, they're being and population like
Chemically castrated.
and you're worried about that girl in Iran.
Right.
This is how
and
propaganda
now you're
works.
justifying a whole, you know, like you're talking about, I don't know how many billions of dollars have already been spent in treasury and our arms, you know, are depleted for what? You're going to try to sell us that nonsense? It's fucking bullshit. Anyway, you know, I think that we were talking about this.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to tell. I think that Trump is surrounded by Zionist propagandists.
Completely
you know,
surrounded.
and everything in his ear is basically a fucking lie.
His entire
you know,
cabinet
and
is
they,
Zionist
of course,
Jewish.
you know, when they bring a lie, they don't just tell you. They bring all kinds of papers, and they'll bring all the media they need to support their lie, whether it's for the president or the fucking UN, whether it's fake pictures of weapons silos in fucking Iraq, or you know, convincing Trump that we need a space force because these are the aliens that are going to come and threaten us. Okay, here's a couple $1 billion. Start the space force so we can protect against space.
Well, they're not going to spend it on space, but they're going to spend it on Israel.
And that's what they've always done.
Yeah, that's what like the underground cities they
Right,
built, the tunnels. You know,
But I don't think that he has lost his mind. I think that he is massively misinformed.
Well, he's
You
misinformed.
know, and because he's
MK
already
Ultra.
starting to pass the. You know, you heard him the other day say, "Well, Jared said that you know this was a good idea," and so did Pete. And I'm like, did he just?
Yeah.
Did he just fucking? Is he starting
The
to
alcoholic Secretary of Defense
to pawn
who just-
off
yeah.
this decision to bomb Iran because his son-in-law and this fucking fraternity drunk told him that it was a good idea?
Yeah.
You made the call, man.
Right,
You know
I
what I mean?
know.
I'm like, what are we, 12 years old?
Just
But he's
because he makes the military do push-ups, he's a great Secretary of Defense.
my God.
Like what
The dude shouldn't be
geopolitical
in charge of
understanding?
he shouldn't be in charge of a high school football team.
Yeah, I mean, assistant coach. I
Yeah,
think he'd be a
maybe.
great hype man. You know what I mean? With a head coach,
As
to
long
keep
as he
him in line.
stays, yeah.
You know, because
Power go to
you know
his head.
he's like a Pete Hegseth is like he's like that puppy that wants to do good.
Right.
Like, did I do good, Dad? Did I? Let's all do
What a
push-ups. Let's all like it's
stooge,
like
man.
it's like somebody who's not a leader that tries way too hard to be a leader.
Right.
And he just gets told
Chomping
what to
at the
do.
bit.
100%. Just wanting to be the coach, but doesn't belong
Yeah.
there, and they would never hire him to be. Right.
No.
But that's why they make him that, because he's got another boss. Pete
That's
Hegseth
right.
goes everywhere with some Jewish, not Jewish, Zionist dude. I forget the guy's name. Literally everywhere.
I know.
It's like his handler,
Yep.
right? Just like Trump's everywhere with Lutnick
Yeah.
and Kushner.
Yeah.
And so, man, I mean,
This is surrounded on all
it
sides.
is un-American. It's against the Constitution. It's against every framework of our constitutional republic for them to be, for our president to be surrounded by people who are dual citizens
Right.
of Israel, and then also all have a religious agenda, because one of the guarantees our Constitution gives us is the separation of church and state.
Hello.
And that doesn't mean Zionism's cool and everything else has got to be out of there.
And why the fuck should we not be allowed to boycott a country that we don't want our money being sent to? That is
100%.
so un-American.
But
they've been trying to pass laws that
Brainwashing.
protect against people even speaking against the nation of Israel, making associations.
Oh, the anti-Semitism laws.
And thank God so far they have been unsuccessful with that, because it really is flagrant in the face of the First Amendment. But you know, there's 36 states, I believe now, that you cannot legally boycott Israeli goods.
Or
Now,
you
how about
can't-
that for a built-in
Well,
fucking?
you can't boycott the goods, but also in a lot of states, you can't. Your company,
Yeah, you
can
can get fined.
Yeah, your company can get fined if your company doesn't work.
Yeah.
Or like
considered-
agree with Israel or something. Well, it's not like it's a weird verbiage, but you basically can't say like you could boycott America.
Yeah. Yeah.
As a company, you could still get contracts. You could literally say America sucks.
Who's in
I
charge
hate
again?
this country. I'm not using American goods. I'm not going to hire American people.
Who was it? Voltaire that said, "Look at who you can't criticize. That's who is in charge."
Oh yeah, something like that. That was Voltaire. But also, I think when you look at where this goes, it's like it doesn't just stop with Iran.
No.
Now you have a lot of Israeli people, like leaders, like the Zionist government, saying Turkey needs to be taken
they've
out.
already said it.
Well, so it's just like I think a lot of people are like, oh, this is going to be another 9/11, or this is going to be another Iraq or another Afghanistan. No, it's not. Iran's dug in. They have known.
They've had
everyone-
35 fucking years to plan.
Everyone knows the Zionist plan.
Right.
Every country knows the Zionist plan. That's
And
why
they
a
are
lot of-
showing how prepared they are.
Oh, 100%. Iran's like, we're ready.
Yeah.
We know we will lose.
Yeah.
But we are going to take as many of you out.
Yeah, and you're not
We are
gonna-
going to destroy the world's oil supply, the world's natural
Right.
gas
You want to
supply.
collapse
Yeah.
everything? Continue on.
We will collapse the global economy, and they can.
And they fucking know it.
Oh
too.
yeah, but they will.
Yeah.
Because think about it. That 95% of that country is Shia Muslim.
Right.
You've already killed the religious leader. We bombed a school and murdered
Right.
170, 100 something schoolgirls, but just daughters of their military commanders.
Right.
They are going to fight
Right.
till the last man standing. They're not going to surrender.
No.
They are literally going to fight till the last man standing,
And
and,
there's
they
just
will
no- there's
destroy
no-
the world
there's no-
economy.
You
Trump
can't- you
has
ca-
to stop.
He has to find an off ramp.
They miscalculated.
Completely miscalculated. And you have China and Russia provide. I think, obviously, in my opinion, providing massive intelligence, weapons. Whatever Iran needs. The same way we would come to the aid of Taiwan if China. And they've had so Iran is dealing with two of the other superpowers who have all the technology that we have and then some. They're their own unique spins, things that we keep getting surprised by.
Right.
And so Iran is not going anywhere. It's not going to be defeated. And if you annihilate Iran, you annihilate the fucking you. There goes the global.
Well, Trump's trying to control the
petrodollar.
oil. So,
You know.
so globalization is phased globalization, right? So now they're doing a lot of talks now where they keep saying the new world order, new world
Well, they've
order.
been saying,
Trump's
yeah.
like Cuba's. Oh, they've been saying it, but now like JD Vance is saying it a lot,
God
right?
help us.
So I think what you'll see the first phase of globalization I don't know if they're on timeline for Agenda 2030.
Right.
I think they,
No.
I don't think they can get us into globalization unless they just us with another something.
Yeah, but
or
they've
start World
shown
War
that
III.
they're piss poor at that. They're
Well,
good.
I mean,
They're good
you know.
at getting people to believe.
Well, there's systems, right?
Oh, yeah.
But I think we're, with this war, especially right now, I think they realize that the American populace isn't going to have it.
No.
Like people are starting to wake up.
No, I know.
So either you 9/11 us again. This is their only.
But here's the
option.
thing: I mean, don't get me wrong. It took them a year to figure out and find an opportunity for the Lusitania. A whole year, of back and forth between Britain and America, while we were providing, support and financial support. We were not involved in that war. Besides looking for an opportunity to cause a mass casualty event, so we could get Congress to say, okay, we're going to war, and that's So they do play the long game, but I think that more than ever, you see memes going around now, and it's like, I wonder what America is going to do to itself next to get people to support this war, and hopefully people are awake enough to be like, I don't care, we don't believe it was the Iranians. You can parade a Middle Eastern man in front of us and say that he's guilty and he's the one responsible for this. I don't know if it's going to fly. The problem is the Congress is so corrupt and bought out by AIPAC that they
can
don't
make it
represent people.
So they can make it so bad at will. Now here's where I think this goes, and again, they tell you what they're.
And also Charlie Kirk and the fact that his entire security team
Mossad.
happened to be Mossad
Yeah.
that day. I want to get into that if we can talk around that a little bit too. But
Yeah, man. Yeah, no, so, dude, so there is a. This is where this goes now. I think Israel is not going to stop, and I think Trump now is seeing not just that they're going to lose the midterms. Like, there's no way in hell they win the midterms now.
Are you kidding me?
MAGA's fractured. Every day, more and more people are walking away from Trump and waking up to who he works for, who he's controlled by. People are waking up to how bad Israel is. So the only way, if you're fighting a psychological warfare now, and you're Israel, because they own our government, that they win this is they make Americans hate Muslims again.
Right.
So most Americans woke up to the fact that Israel did 9/11, that the hijackers, 2 of them were Israeli Mossad, 3 were in the CIA. Like,
7 are still alive.
Right, yeah. Holy shit, right? Yeah. How did that happen?
What the hell?
So basically, America woke up that the World Trade Center was a controlled demolition.
Right.
They sacrificed Americans to get into a war, right? And so now you're starting to see, and I know this is coming because I'm seeing the propaganda stages. Propaganda builds up to the attack.
Right.
So what are you seeing on all of the conservative things now? Anti-Muslim, anti-Sharia, they're trying to take over America, whatever. Well, guess what? One part I left out that we segued from, during after 9/11, the 25-year war, all you did with the terrorist group, after you destroy the governments, you destroy the militaries, well, now you have sectarian violence, internal violence, and you have tons of immigrants fleeing those countries so they can live a better life and get their kids away so their kids won't join ISIS, so they won't grow up under this radical oppression. Well, guess who created that problem? Israel. Why? First thing, you had to get all those people out of the countries because we got to take it over. Less people we got to fight, less people we got to kill, less mess. Well, this also plays into the next phase where they have to do something. Because again, I don't care what people believe in. People can believe whatever they want. I'm telling you what these people believe in. I'm telling you what's coming. If you don't listen to me, then fine. I'm just telling you I know. If you think I'm an idiot or an asshole, go for it. But, I don't care what people think about me. I'm going to tell you the truth. And when you watch it happen, you can maybe send me a thank you card if you're still alive. But so the next phase of this, there's prophecy and there's reality. So within all these groups, all of these immigrants, and Charlie Kirk pointed this out before they killed him, they're not going to kill me. They don't care about me because I don't have the influence over 60 million kids. You know, he did. I have 138,000 followers and a decently good attitude. And, and so with this play, it was Zionist organizations that paid, like HIAS, look it up, HAIS, paid for all of these, Muslims to be shipped to America and shipped to Europe.
Wow.
They flooded us with the Muslim population to set the stage for what's coming. In their prophecy, the Gog-Magog war is the war versus, I forget the only way, Saddam and Edom or something like that, where basically it'll be Christian versus Muslim, and that war will get so bad. It'll get so bloody. So many people will die that eventually the Christians and Muslims will realize, wait a second, the Jews made us, or the Zionists, the synagogue of Satan made us do this, not the Jews. Because Jews aren't bad. Jews are good people, in my opinion. Not the Zionist ones, though, right? But then when you look at, they're going to come together, and then they're going to descend upon Israel, or whatever that is, or the synagogue of Satan. They're going to descend upon the synagogue of Satan, and then what they call the Jewish Messiah, which is the Antichrist will come to power by stopping this Christian Muslim attack, and then through stopping that attack, he'll bring peace to the earth, right? And then that's how globalization, New World Order, all that comes to power. So they flooded America and Europe with all these Muslims, and they haven't let any fights happen yet. Like if you try to start the fight yet, they arrest you, they throw you in prison. If you try to start going against it yet, they silence you in Europe because they need this to build up to the point to where we're killing each other. So they won't let this stuff happen until they need it to happen. So I think what you're going to see happen, I don't know if it's next week, tomorrow, or in the next 2 years, because the population of them are already here. The hate's already been built up through propaganda. The radicalization's already been created on both sides, right? Like they already created the radicalization because America and Britain and France destroyed their countries. American Britain fans killed their fathers, killed their grandfathers, murdered their babies, right? These people are already mad enough.
I mean, many of them who are living here, I think, are are acclimated, but the majority.
Yeah. And see what I mean is, but radicals not the majority.
Right.
All you need is 1% to 2%
1%,
of a population to radicalize. So the people that had their dads get killed, the people that had their grandfathers get killed,
those are the ones they work
the people
on.
whose daughters were
Right.
and then they groom them, and they send them here. So what did they do though? So you have a Muslim population here, and then you start the propaganda, and you start to get the white people mad at the Muslim people and
blaming them,
fuck you, and doing all the, pointing all the fingers and blaming you and talking about Sharia law and calling them and child. And we have the white people doing it. Well, that starts to push them into it closer together and knit together. And then you have the radical people on that end starting to preach the radical Muslim stuff. It's that they hate you. They hate you. See how it goes back and forth?
It's dividing.
This is a psychological warfare on both sides. The Zionist bankers have funded both sides of every war because they make money from both sides. And then because they finance the war, they then get to determine which side wins.
Yeah.
Because the side
they win no matter what.
No, they do accomplish their goals.
Right.
Phase line goals. So now you have the radicals being able to now radicalize Muslims because they're starting to see the hate, the oppression, the stuff on social media, and then you're seeing the stuff on the right side. So the Gog Magog war kicks off in the middle of all of this. Christians and Muslims start killing each other. I think there's going to be a mass Western world global attack, an event, if you will, kicked off by Muslims that they'll blame on Iran, right? Where, you'll see Sarah Adams has been talking about it for a minute. She used to say ISIS. She used to say Al-Qaeda, all the keywords that made sense to Americans then, right? And then now it's Hezbollah groups, right? The same people, same bullshit, but now it's playing into the narrative for how
I think ISIS came out and was it Al Qaeda or said that they're going to send troops to help Israel?
Oh yeah,
and everyone was like,
Al Qaeda is helping Israel, and Al Qaeda, because it was created through mutual intelligence, CIA, Mossad, all these entities funded by our tax dollars.
Al Qaeda. Remember, we blamed them for bombing. Well,
I mean, Bin Laden was a CIA agent.
I know,
it's widely known, right? So
well, not widely, but
most people are waking up, right?
Yeah.
And then you look at Lebanon right now. They're taking over southern Lebanon. I lived in Lebanon for a while. I love Lebanon. The people, the culture. Awesome. There's a nice, what I call the Christian bubble from Beirut up to Hamat. Lebanon has some of the best food, the best culture, best parties. Beautiful ladies. I mean, it's just it's an amazing place.
I heard it was, yeah.
And now Israel's destroying it.
It's fucking.
Yeah, and they'll just slowly destroy more and more. All Hezbollah, Hamas, like everything's Hamas.
Hamas is bombing itself.
Yeah. You're like, what? Everything's
Iran's
Hamas.
about to,
every day Iran, is weeks away for 30 years. We have nuclear weapon, dude.
How
it's
stupid.
Because people are stupid. Right. They just live in the now. They don't read history. They don't read books. They just listen to what they're told on their news, and they go back to living their life.
Yep.
And so
they believe it.
Yeah. So anyways, I think you're about to see mass chaos created by some attack like 9/11. Sarah Adams and people have been talking about 10 cities, simultaneous attack, mass chaos and death, where they're going to, attack population centers, then attack first responders. Then once there's some level of just complete flagrant Islamic violence where all you can see on the news and through your social media is all this
then
murder and all this
Congress
death, well, then guess what's going to happen? America is not just going to support this war. They're going to join the army and go kill them terrorists.
Right.
You know what I mean? And the next thing you know, we destroy it. We just 9/11, but on crack.
Right.
And you're going to go see, if I see the writings on the wall and know what's happening, see the way they're played, I know their game.
Right.
Then you're going to see at some point America invade Iran and accept the casualties, accept the death, because look what they did to us.
Yeah, see, that's gonna. I understand exactly what you're saying, and I think it's certainly within the realm of potential timelines.
Potential, right?
Yeah, but potential being the key word. I think that I think that I don't know if they could get away. You see, we live in a different time, even than 20 years ago, even 26 years ago. Everything is being analyzed, in real time, and social media, even though they created it, as a way to collect information about us, the wonderful thing about humanity and the human spirit is there's an ingenuity and an intelligence that is in us And, with Charlie Kirk, we quickly figured out, wait a minute. Well, some of us who know guns were like, a 30-06 can't do that. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, that just doesn't happen.
Period. I was like, have you shot a 30-06? Have you shot it at a living?
That would have decapitated.
It would have blown his fucking head right off.
Literally, yeah.
And
the velocity alone, not even the round. The
and I try to explain this to people. I'm like, no. Let me just. We're talking about ballistics. We're not talking. This is not theory. You know what I mean? This is not like
people are stupid, man.
I know.
Because FBI Director Kash Patel,
God.
who they thought was going to save America and rout the deep state, said that bullet did it. That bull did it.
Right.
And you're a conspiracy brute. Propaganda goes every way. But brother, the thing around this is that it is all propaganda. But also, they control the government right now. We could be arrested for being,
terrorists.
We could be right. We could be called domestic terrorists.
That's what 9/11 gave them the power to do.
Well, literally. So they could start arresting people like us that call them out for the evils that they do. And I hope they won't.
No,
I hope society wakes up. But this only goes one or two ways, bro. There's no in the middle anymore.
Right.
They are pushing this, and it's going to go one or two ways. Either America has the collective wake up and removes the Zionist oligarchy and control of this country, or we die quietly in the night and globalization comes. Because David Ben Gurion, the founder of Israel, the atheist, non-believer of God, founder of Israel, who led the militia that Haganah, that murdered everyone to then create Israel, and then Haganah, Lehi, and Ergon were made international terrorist groups.
That's right.
Right? Became the IDF.
And the literal majority governing.
And the majority governing, and then became the IDF. So literally, Israel was founded by terrorists.
Exactly. No, I tell people
no different than radical Islamic terrorists. They're just Zionist terrorists. Right. So, and now we're led by them because they controlled the money. Right. And if people don't see this and they don't wake up, everything that I've said on this podcast, you can research and study and find on the internet and still in books yourself. Right. But until America's collectively educated, until America really understands our history and they understand the religious goals of people and that they understand the beliefs of the people that are in power and they understand why these things happen and why they get away with it and why psychological warfare works and why religious warfare works, until they understand that, brother, then we will be led to the slaughter.
I know.
And they could pull the trigger on this tomorrow, or they could take 2 more years of programming, brainwashing, and complacency.
That's the thing. I think we have a little bit of time because I don't think they could get away with pulling it off tomorrow. I don't think people would believe Iran is capable. You had you've had what's his name talking about
the drones in California.
Like some of this stuff is like, man. Like I'm like, really? But people will believe just about anything, and
I think you're underestimating the stupidity of the people they brainwash. And here's the thing, man. You and I live in echo chambers, right? We live in self-created echo chambers. The people that follow us, we have a lot of similar follower group, right?
Yeah.
But also
they know what's up.
Different. They know what's up.
They have a clue.
But so that makes us, I think, falsely believe, to be honest, brother, that a lot of people.
Well, I found that out on October 7th.
Right.
And everyone was like, "Hey,
Hamas,
unfollow." I was like, "Wait a minute, y'all believe that? You guys believe this?"
Well, but here's the thing: it's not that they just believe it, brother. It's the echo chamber. So think about it. Excuse me. Think about it like this. You have my bad. You think about you choose who you want to listen to.
Right.
So the second someone says something that challenges your construct, challenges your indoctrination, challenges your propaganda, the flavor of Kool-Aid that you're drinking,
right?
You go to where you like the flavor.
Right.
Nobody's going to drink Kool-Aid they don't like.
Right.
It's an acquired taste. It's like, remember the first time you had a sip of alcohol and you're like, oh.
Yeah. And
then after a while you're like, all right.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, you're drinking old fashions. The next thing you know, you're drinking bourbon straight. Right. Well, because it takes an acquired taste to appreciate something or learn something. It's easier to believe the bullshit. It's easier to go with the group. It's easier, right? And so our echo chambers are full of people that are collectively waking up, like elevating their consciousness, whatever you want to call it, their understanding. And you can't elevate your consciousness without understanding the now, understanding the past, understanding religion,
Right.
understanding philosophy, spirituality. It is a collective understanding to be able to see through the bullshit.
Right.
You know, to be and I really believe, for me, my opinion, I know some people believe that Jesus is within us, right?
Right.
You know, in the sense of, he says, sorry, man, I'm bad with mics.
You're good.
I got to tie one on me, 'cause I get on stage and give speeches and I just wander,
Right.
bro. I'd walk into the audience if I
don't
could.
worry.
But so when you look at that, I think everyone has a different belief of what Jesus
Right.
meant, because it depends on the translation. And you
Right.
know, dude, I could do a 2-hour class on translation and manipulation, but and I will. But you know,
should.
but
Because people need to understand that.
yeah, it's important. But it's you know, it's a sit down, sit through, right? You know, so with this whole dynamic of manipulation right now, you're gonna see, I think, one or two things happen, right? You know, where this conscious, collective consciousness goes, and this is what they did in World War II, right? Round up the Jews, will round up the dissenters, right? Make people be scared to stand up against the narrative, because you'll end up in the prison camps with the Jews, so to speak, right? And so I hope that doesn't happen, but they've done that playbook twice.
know,
The Bolshevik Revolution, they did it during World War II.
Right.
I mean, that was only what, 80 years ago?
Yeah.
I'm bad at math. So
know-
I'm just saying it is a possibility.
No, it's definitely a possibility. And you know, look, we don't even need a war in Iran for them to be looking for their next false flag. We're talking about America here. You know, America is highly addicted to war. We're highly addicted to hegemony and oil and keeping this scarcity, monopoly, stronghold, and debt enslavement system in place. But the fact is, it's not sustainable. So, but here's the thing that I want to say.
Yeah.
The more people who can understand that all of this bullshit about prophecy, beliefs, and the end of times, the more people buy into that and begin to put their minds on it, the more they're ushering in that probability.
Right.
We are of God, created by God, children of God. And like God, we have the ability to create the reality that either resembles the heaven on earth that it should, or the hellscape that they've been telling us we deserve. And I don't believe that we deserve any of it. I believe people are inherently good.
I believe people are inherently
You know,
good as well.
If there's an old lady crossing the street and there's a car coming, it doesn't really matter how old you are. Your instinct is not Darwinism and survival of the fittest, and I'm not going to put myself in harm's way. You don't think, you're gonna push her out of the way.
You're gonna
That
try.
is our nature.
Yeah, unless you're consumed, unless you've been blocking off
That's
the
right.
light.
And even then,
it's the spirits.
instincts kick in. But what I'm saying is, what I want people to remember, given the nature of this conversation, is that we are not doomed to any fate but what we make.
Oh,
You know,
100%.
we can collectively decide this is not the direction we want to go, and we can put our minds to it and we can change it. We do not have to be along for the ride. People who are unconscious of their fucking souls and their ability to create the reality, they go along for the ride. They think that the world is about the Tao, and that, you know, as long as they got enough money to buy their next fucking Audi, whatever, but you know,
Because they don't want to change the system.
But
You and I try to change the system.
That's right. And what I'm saying is, you don't have to be along for the ride. Not in your life, not as a part of society. You can move out of the NPC and move into someone who is operating on a conscious, soulful level, first creating peace in your heart, and then you will start to see it reflected in the world. That is how powerful we are as creators. And so I
agree.
You know, and I believe that, and I just want to remind people, even though I know this podcast has focused on outcomes that are undesirable, we're trying to bring awareness of what the plan is.
Yeah.
Because if you don't want that plan, you're going to have to start putting your mind on ways to go around it.
It's time for
Other
people to
outcomes.
wake up.
That's right.
And so
That's
what I'm
saying.
telling you is what they're doing. Their goal is to do this. I'm not saying it will happen. I'm
Right.
telling you they will
No,
do
you're
this.
right. And
they
people
will
need
try
to
this.
know the agenda.
Yeah. They
'Cause
have
if you know
to.
the agenda, they can't surprise you. Then when you see the tower that Larry Silverstein bought in L.A. happens to be the same one that is
Oh no!
You know.
I mean, like, come on, man.
How
And-
I'm fucking
and
on the
they-
nose.
But
You can't be
see-
more on them, but that's how they are. They're on the nose.
But they would do it again.
I
just
know.
to say, look what we can do.
I know.
To show you how powerful they
That's right.
are, because they get off on that. They get
do.
off. Well, that's the whole thing. If you look through the Epstein files, you look through, a lot of these forensic exams of
Yeah.
children that have been through those satanic and all the things that they do to. When you look at the Epstein files and you read through that, a lot of these kids, they would be by Jesus or someone dressed as Jesus, and then they would be saved by someone dressed like the devil. They would, do everything to scare them. They would hunt them. They would chase them. They would do everything they could to create fear, because that energy shift, that fear
That's
is
what
what
they
they get
feed
off on, because that's their void.
Right.
Like when you're good, you feel good.
Right.
Like, when I would, like, in the morning, you see like your little girl wake up and just come in and smile at you, and you make her breakfast. You're like, that makes me feel good, because that's my child, and I get to hang out with her and spend the day with her, and or go watch now my daughters play lacrosse or play soccer and see how excited they are that I'm there.
Yeah.
That's what you live for.
Exactly.
But those evil people who have turned away from Christ, turned away from the conscience, like the good, the light,
Right.
they feed off the evil. So to create more energy, to create more evil energy, they have to do these things to feel anymore, because they can't feel good anymore.
No, because they're cut off.
They're cut off from the good. So they want to put the fear out there. And what I'm telling people is not to make you fear. And what people ask me all the time, they're like, Matt, aren't you scared they'll do something to you? No.
Right.
Because I found my peace.
Right.
I know now what good is. I know what is worth living for.
Right.
And why? Because if you don't know what's worth living for, if you don't have if you're not centered in your faith,
Exactly, yeah.
right? You don't know what's worth dying for.
Right.
Right. If you're lost, if you're helpless, if you're full of anxiety, full of fear, irrational, let the world get to you. Because I'm in this world, not of this world. And that's the way I look at it. Like, I believe I was created by a divine creator. I believe in Jesus. I know that everyone has their different dynamics of that, but I believe in Jesus as the Son of God. That's just my belief.
Right.
And so when I look at it in the teachings and the life of Jesus, what I know is that if I am good, and if I try to do good in life, and have I messed up? Yes, I've messed up so many times. I've never been a malicious or evil person, but man, I've done stupid shit. I drank too much, done too many drugs, slept with too many women. Not appreciated things I've had. I've made mistakes, but the man that I was then is not the man that I am now. And the lessons that I have learned from some mistakes repeatedly, I think have given me the courage to stand up against it, because I know I won't fall for that anymore. I'm not going to fall for that evilness anymore. And so now I know the man that I am, and what I have become, and the hurt that I've done to others, the hurt that's been done to me, the hurt that I've done to the world, the things I've seen, the miles that I've walked, the wars that I've fought, the lives that I've taken, the lives that I've saved, all of these different dynamics in my life, all these different chapters has made me today in peace, because I know what's worth living for, and I know what's worth dying for. And I will stand up and be a leader and tell people the truth, because I don't give a flying fuck what they do to me, because when they take me out of this world, I'm going to be back with my maker. So you know what? Make it hurt. I dare you. And it's like, and that's where I'm living, because that's what that consciousness is, right? There is good and evil. I fully believe in good and evil, because evil is the absence of God. So if you're removed from God, then God knows what you'll do. Right? And so somebody has to stand up and say, there is a line you will not cross. There is a point to where we will not take this anymore as a society. You can't kill any more kids. You can't any more children. You cannot be evil. And take over this world, or either Jesus comes back with a sword and robe dipped in blood. If you look at that Revelation version,
some people believe that. Yeah,
I know some people do, and I do in a way, because man, the more I looked at it, the more I've seen behind the curtain is it's not spirituality that takes us. There is a creator, there is a creation, and there is a battle going on in the heavens just like there is here. And I've seen it with my own eyes. I'm not even going to go into that, but I've seen Nephilim. Okay, I'm telling you right now. I've seen things that weren't human that came from this. I know for a fact they exist, and I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but if I can look at you in the eyes of a man and say, I'm telling you right now, angels and demons exist, that technology exists, and that there's a war going on between them, and there's a war going on between us, and we are what the war is over. because we're the creation.
Right.
And so when people don't understand that concept, at least for me, and no one has to, you can take what I'm saying and throw it in the trash if you want. But what I'm telling you is from what I've seen, from my faith, from my journeys, my dances with the devil and my turning away from God and doing the things that I did in life. Once I found Jesus, the way that I found Jesus, once I started speaking up and fighting for good, that is when everything made sense.
Right.
And not just made sense. That's when I got to see all the evil they made me do, the evil that they turned me into.
Right.
Because nothing about manipulating others and destroying others and killing others and doing all the things that I did is good.
No.
Nothing about that is good. And if you tell me I have to do evil for good,
Yeah. Then
no.
Then yeah.
But you know what?
There's a point where you wake up and realize, and that's what we need. We need a great awakening, because we need people to realize that you can't kill your way into a peaceful civilization.
You can't.
Violence
but
begets
you also
violence.
can't peace your way into a peaceful civilization. At some point, evil's going to try to kill you. And if you can't stand up for yourself, if you can't fight back, you're going to die.
But the majority of people,
Yeah.
So, just like a tuning fork, if the majority of people begin to vibrate at a certain tone, frequency, whatever you call it, then these outliers are going to become more and more ostracized into the outskirts of society. They're going to become more and more marginalized. And I think that is possible. The more people understand their connection with the divine, the more they understand that if we disinvest ourselves from these institutions and these beliefs, that we can recreate life that is far more harmonious
I hope so.
and in league with nature than we've been led to believe, because we have everything we could
But
want.
how do you defeat evil? And that's the other part I think about, is that once they've removed themselves, can they come back to the light? And I believe so. I believe they can come back to the light, but I think some people are so overtaken with darkness, because when you start to get removed from God, it's not a complete encapsulation of your soul.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I've looked people in the eyes that a spirit, a demon has completely blocked their eyes out. There was nothing left in them, right? And some people, you can start to see the evil overtaking.
Right.
You can. It's all in the eyes. The eyes are the window to the soul.
Right.
And the eyes are also your window to the world. So it goes both ways. And man, it's the spiritual warfare is more real than people can ever understand. The problem is most people can't see it because they've been educated, they've been indoctrinated. That you've been told what's real and what's true. What's fake and what's not in your school books. You've been taught what science is in your school books, the constraints of science, the capabilities of man. You've been given a framework to see the world through, so that you wouldn't be able to see the spiritual, so that you wouldn't be able to understand everything outside of it, brother. And so, I totally agree with you about the collective resonance, the frequency, the harmony. We need that collective consciousness that comes from your DNA. That's your frequency.
Right.
So we're all born with a calling, I believe, or a path, and we get to choose if we follow it or not. But some of us have to fight evil, brother.
No. Listen, I understand what you're saying, and I believe in the polarity of this planet, the relativity, the cause and effect, and I believe that because of the nature of our species and how sentient we are, and how we may or may not have gotten so sentient so quick, and the fact that we have this missing link in our quote evolutionary history, I think that what we're experiencing, is a transition, and that we think in terms of battle, because that is our nature, that is human beings.
We are humans.
We have, I think that some of the DNA that we are infused with is absolutely, warrior DNA. And that's why
we're created to do that.
Some of the reason why I think we follow the leader so readily is because that was also bred into our genes, for whatever reason it was. But we show up on the planet 250,000 years ago. We didn't evolve from Neanderthal. They were here at the same time as us. We were even having some relations with them. We know that now because their genes were carried on through some of us.
Well, who were the Neanderthal? Were they Neanderthal, or were they something else? So I've got a lot of good friends at the CIA that told me the whole thing was a lie. You know, the entire thing.
Right.
Because what there were, they're giants. We have
Right.
giant skeletons all over the world. We
Oh,
have
I
a
know
special
that,
forces
for
team that
sure.
killed them. So the only species, at least according to people that make the Matrix, because
Right.
I used to know, I know them, still do.
Right.
The only species that's ever been here on Earth is humans, and then all the things that the sons of God did to us.
Right.
You know, and so we've never found Neanderthal bones. We found giant bones.
We found Neanderthal bones.
Well, no, they make that shit up.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what I'm telling you, man. All that stuff in the Smithsonian, it's just shit they made up.
Right.
And well, because what they've done with, you know, if you can, everything that they want to do, everything that they do is to, at least in their opinion, stop you from believing truth.
Right.
So they create all these, who created the Mossad? Or excuse me, who created Maxwell Publishing?
Yeah.
Okay. So if they're teaching you a totally complete false education, they have to create the things to back that
Right.
falsehood up. Because all they want to do is make you think that you're an atom that walked
Right.
out of the
You're
ocean.
a random
That you're
mutation.
There's a random mutation. So they have to create all these ulterior versions of Neanderthals and creation. It's all made up by the CIA and the Vatican.
Wow.
And the Smithsonian. I'm telling you right now, I know people who have defected from that world that helped build the lie and the narrative. They teach it in universities so that you believe that there's all these other things here than human, that you believe that there's all these different beings here than the aliens and stuff. All they're doing is trying to get you to not look at the God creator.
Right.
That you were,
No, I know. It's
that
all
you
fucking
were
distractions.
unique, right? It's all distractions. So what they've done throughout history is not that God created other things. It's that they've messed with DNA. This isn't their first rodeo.
No, obviously not.
Yeah.
You know.
They've when they mess with our DNA, it doesn't. It's not that Neanderthals were a different species or a different creation. It's that there's things that they've messed with that created giants, that created the Nephilim spirits, and so that's a different dynamic. And I hope this person I know who used to be a part of the Matrix of Lies will come forward one day. Yeah. But I can just tell you that he showed me enough evidence where I'm like,
Wow.
I got to touch some shit I've never. I'm just gonna say, man. You know, we're not alone, and they're not aliens, they're demons and angels, you know? And it's a warring faction of creation, whatever you believe an angel or demon is, whether the reptilian or the, you know, the Anunnaki and
the tall whites and the grays and the, you know, like, I do think that there's a common theme throughout our history that connects all these things. And I think that, you know, whatever you want to label these entities or beings, you know, I think they come in all different shapes and sizes. I think that they, just like human beings, many of them are probably good. Some of them have their own agenda. Some of them act a lot like some of the worst human beings on the planet, which is to say very fucking reptilian, you know, and I think that,
dish.
right, absolutely. And I think you have a faction, a small faction that has come into enormous power and control through manipulation of free will. You know, and that faction is.
Do you think they're human?
They're
though?
self-serving, territorial, kind of cold-blooded, sociopathic view about, you know, and they use. I think they use humans now. Whether that is the Draco fucking reptilians or you know, the fucking lower class of demons, whatever you want to call it, their goals are the same, right?
Well, have you heard about this guy? This guy that he was doing 23andMe, and he swabbed his lizard at the house and then sent it off.
No,
there's videos all over Instagram.
No shit.
His lizard came back as Ashkenazi Jewish.
Shut the fuck up!
I swear to God.
Oh my God!
Swear to God, it's a real thing.
Oh
He video documented the whole process, everything. His lizard came back as Ashkenazi Jewish.
My God.
Right. So my point is, man, there's a lot of things that I don't think a lot of people understand about the nature of things. But what I can tell you is this, and this is just things, people that broken this down in different pathways and chapters and curtains, if you will, of my life. DNA, right, is the creation.
Right.
And everything outside of DNA is the evil force trying to alter and destroy the creation.
Right.
And that's the battle in the heavens, so to speak, the good and the evil. But here's also the part that people have to remember is, how would all these people come together under one agenda and one agenda only, and that directly aligns with the biblical agenda, and it directly aligns with the satanic agenda, they believe this, the most powerful men in the world.
Right.
Literally worship this entity, work for this entity,
Many
are
of
trying
them,
to manifest this
I
destiny
know.
of evil. And it's exact same story that meshes up exactly with the story in the Bible, just the other direction and in the middle. And then everything just keeps happening and batting 1,000.
Right.
And you're like, at some point, man, it's, I know it's easy to start to get into a lot of spiritual realms and to start looking at all kinds of things that we can't understand, right?
Right.
And the more you get out of the center core, we start to make all these other, realities and all these things, but we don't know them. We believe them. We have, we have a framework, but we've never been able to touch it, or we've never been able to experience it. And we see things in dream state. We see things in all these, and we use drugs to get to these states and levels. And I've done it. I've done all the shroom trips. I've done acid. I've explored the spiritual realms, but you never get anywhere with the conclusion. It's all just more mysticism. It's all just more misunderstanding. It's all more pathways that lead to no conclusion. And so I think a lot of that can be distractions too. Because,
I think one of the reasons why religion is such a poison pill is because it offers conclusions.
100%. Well, that's what I mean. So the conclusion
when
is
there
outside.
is no conclusion.
Well, what I mean is that there isn't one other than just the poles.
Right.
Because everything
That's
like
right.
is polar, right? You have the good side and you have the evil side.
Right.
And so there's ways you can describe it, right? And so, I think a lot of people get messed up with religion's bullshit, and then they start to not see the poles.
Right.
And the poles are just good and evil. It's light and darkness.
Right.
And so when you look at the polar relationship of things, it's just like humanity. We do it. We're created in the image of, one extreme always creates another extreme.
That's right.
And humanity, the human nature, the reason this shit keeps happening and we live in a circle, and we just live in a hamster wheel, is because the one constant that's never evolved, that's never changed, is human nature. And we keep living in this hamster wheel because of our creation, because of the limitations of our brain, the limitations of our consciousness, the limitations. And all of us want to hope that we can escape this. Well, people have tried to escape this since the beginning of man, because there wasn't just the Bible and the Bible books. There was all kinds of other books written.
But you can't say for sure that some haven't escaped it.
Well, no, I'm not saying they haven't, but we haven't collectively. So we keep repeating the same mistakes collectively.
Yeah.
And
we're advancing at a tremendous rate. But
well, we are. Well, technology is, but are we advancing? Because here's the other thing, brother.
let me ask you this real quick, though.
Yeah.
Important to note, you spoke about what has made you the man you are today. How you went from the negative side of the polarity to the positive side of the polarity.
Well, 100%.
And that was a dark path, right? But you would not be the person you are. And I can say the same thing about myself. If I had not experienced the trauma I had and went on the, soul searching journey that I did and finding a way to heal what had happened to me, that I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you and be the person I am, then it's important to remember that God works in mysterious ways, and everything truly does happen for a reason.
100%.
And so what we may be seeing is truly just the fastest transition, which may also be the darkest path into the light. Which I that's what my faith in this divine intelligence that is God and our Creator. I don't believe that anything that is not going to lead to our eventual, liberation and enjoyment of because this is in my belief system, this is heaven. This earth, this is the Garden of Eden.
Well, what happens when
everything
you
we
die?
could want that is already here.
Where do you go when you die then?
I think you get to decide, just like you got to decide when you came here. And I think that we're living simultaneous lives because time is something we experience in three-dimensional reality.
Well, true. Yeah. Because the creation was a three-dimensional.
That's right.
Time, space, and matter.
So I believe that that nothing is truly in peril because God doesn't make mistakes in His designs. So
right. But isn't life a test though? If you look at like why
life
we
is an
were created.
experience.
Experience, right? But and that's what I mean. So that's why I don't think we're going to reach consciousness on Earth. And this is just my theory, right? But I don't think consciousness happens on Earth because we've been doing the same shit over and over again in a hamster wheel, humanity collectively.
Right.
So I think it's an individual journey. It's a test, if you will. It's like, pain to purpose, right? Like I wouldn't have become or done any of the things that I've become in life without pain, right? I wouldn't have become a Green Beret unless I could make it through the physical pain. Mentally could make it through the physical pain. I didn't become I don't know what you would call it, a spy or a human collection agent, unless I could make it through the mental pain.
Right.
I wasn't able to build a charity, to go save kids and do stuff if I wasn't able to go through the pain of loss, the pain of losing my sister, and then I wouldn't become the man that I've become today unless I had not inflicted pain by cheating on spouses or making bad decisions or, just wanting to be a cowboy and not a dad. Well, I was in the Army. I didn't really have a choice, but my point is like, I've had pain done to me, pain internal, pain external, chosen pain, experienced pain, unavoided pain, and it made me who I am. But at the end of the day, my life has an end. Right?
Yeah.
I end. I die.
This physical
ends.
Yeah.
But so I think this is part of my soul's journey so that my soul becomes what it needs, the calling my soul has, wherever the heck that goes. Or whatever I become. And I think you make the choice in this life, which is why the hamster wheel never stops and we just keep going until some end. Right? You have the end times belief of creation to the end. And then what that means. But, at one point we both are going to die. And the thing that you said early in the beginning of the podcast, the thing that I love, and I think about this all the time, is that, what are we dying for? Right? Where do we go? Right? The heaven ourselves concept, closer to God or farther away from God, or get away from me, I don't know you, as the Bible says, right? Well, I'm living this life to get to this consciousness, is closer to God. Well, heaven, right? Whatever heaven is. Like there's a lot of names for it. And I don't believe in the heaven hell concept. I believe in you're with God or you're not with God.
Yeah, me too.
Which is the same thing. It's just labels, man.
Right.
At the end of the day, it's the same thought, same construct, just a million different ways to describe the same thing or a different outlook on a million things. But at the end of the day, you're either with God or away from God. But so then what's the purpose of this life? Is I don't think humanity is ever going to come together in this life. I know you do.
I'm more optimistic than you.
I know. You see, but this isn't doomsday. So you see, my optimism is not about this life. My optimism is about where it ends. What happens after I die? Because I think life is just a test. And I think whole souls get sent down in this hamster wheel and it's a test and you go up, but you become what you need because God knows what's next. Exactly. Well, God knows.
That's right.
And God knows what's next. So I think humanity, because of human nature, we've never seen evolution. You go all the way back, we're the same idiots. We've gotten taller, we've gotten shorter, but we make the same stupid mistakes in this hamster wheel of ruling and of religion, of slavery,
because
of control.
Because of the miseducation and ignorance.
Oh, 100%. But you would say right now, we know most things about the world. We can tell you, what's inside the atom. We can tell you what's inside the protons, electrons, and neutrons. But you know what we can't do?
What?
Stop people from being stupid.
Feed the hungry.
Stop people from, we can't feed
Stop
the homeless.
the wars.
We can't, why? And why is that?
Make sure everyone has running water.
And it takes me back. And this is why it solidifies my faith. As much as we've learned and as much as we've advanced, we are still doing the same stupid shit.
I know.
We were doing, you know what I mean? We're still hitting each other with rocks and sticks, but now we've got bombs and bullets. No matter how good the food gets or how clean the society gets, well, guess what? We're still robbing and killing each other. And
until we are not anymore.
Maybe. And I don't think it's going to, and I love your outlook. I'm not pessimistic at all, brother. I'm full of hope and peace. I have peace in the chaos because for me, I found Jesus, right? And that's my faith. That's my belief. But, I'm not trying to, yes, I'm going to try to do all I can to help people out in this journey to make this world a better place. But my better place is not this earth. Right. My better place is what happens after. And so the more I've experienced is this, man. Do you know how many people I've been around dying? Probably more than most. I mean, the only people that probably see more people die are nurses and doctors, right? Than somebody who's been in the military for 18 years, right? Death is just a part of it, right? And I'll tell you this, when people are dying, they're not asking for their car. No. They're not asking for their Rolex. They're not asking for any of this stuff. They're not thinking about any of this stuff. You know what they're thinking about? They just want to see that soul
Right.
Their mom or their dad or their wife or their
Right.
girlfriend or their children,
Right.
the souls, the spirits, who they went through this journey with. They
Right.
just want to see them one more
Right.
time. But they're not sad to leave.
No, they're not.
You know what? Because
Sometimes they're sad to come back.
Exactly. Fuck.
Yeah.
You know, and so my point is, man, is knowing that I give two shits what happens from the beginning to the
Right.
start, as long as I win the game. And winning the game to me is becoming the best version of Matt Murphy
I love that.
I possibly can become before God calls me home, and then doing the most I can for my children, for the woman that I love,
Absolutely.
and then for everyone around me, right?
Yeah.
And
No, I get it,
And
bro.
I give two shits about everybody else being happy. You know what? I hope they do.
Right.
And I hope that maybe 1,000 years from now that our collective
Right.
consciousness will rise. But all I care about is that, you know, when I pass away, that I'm with God.
Right.
That I'm with my Creator, that I've earned it. And now in this, you know, this second half of life, because I'm only 42.
Right.
So, you know, who knows how long I got to live on this
Right.
earth. But what I call it this next chapter in my life, and it took me going through one of the worst relationships and divorces and experiences that I've ever had in the highlight of my life. I would never wish what that woman put me through the past year and a half on anyone. Right. But you know what? That pain turned me into the most peaceful, closer to Jesus warrior that I believe that has stepped up and is ready to help people and be a leader in whatever's coming next. And if they take me out, they take me out.
Right.
I'm just here. And here's the thing, brother. I'm not trying to raise consciousness in the sense of, you know, everything's going to be great. I'm trying to raise consciousness in the sense of look at what this evil is doing. Look at what is coming.
Right.
And if we don't stand up and fight against this evil, it will consume us because darkness can block off all the light.
I understand. No, I
You know
understand.
what I mean?
And obviously,
Yeah.
I share a lot of those understandings, or I wouldn't have you on.
Oh, I know,
We
I
wouldn't
know,
be
I
talking,
know.
you
I know.
All
We're sharpening swords right now, brother. What I'm being, but mentally,
Right.
spiritually,
and
physically.
and I think awareness
you know?
is key, and that's why I like having these conversations. But you know, I've also come into an understanding that you know you also have to be mindful of where you know what you're letting consume you, because we do create outcomes. You know, we do have this incredible ability to create. That is that you know. We are God's children. God is the creator, and we are blessed with the ability to do that in this life. You know, and so, you know, what I've realized is it's important to remind people to come back and realize that first of all, peace begins in your own heart with your own soul, right? And we're never going to see. Everything external is a reflection of what is going on in the collective consciousness. You know? So the more people can wake up to that and realize, if I can create peace here and I can walk around with it, then that's one more person, you know, who the world is going to start to reflect what the majority has in their hearts. I think that's the world we're living in. And that's why I have hope. But that's why I think it's important to have these conversations. And I have enjoyed it absolutely immensely.
I have too, man.
You know, it's been.
I think we're
amazing.
saying the same thing.
Yeah, we are. In a lot of ways, we are.
But here's
I'm just telling you. I'm
internally,
reminding Matt
externally,
that
yeah.
Matt, you are a creator. Yeah. You can be a soldier of God. You can be a warrior.
Yeah.
You can be all of those things, but you have to remember that you're also of the divine and creating, right?
Oh,
and so, you know, when you look at the big picture, sure, we have to bring awareness to the true history of this planet and what's going on. But we also have to keep in mind that if we want our children to live in a different world than the one that we've been brought up in, we have to hold that in mind for them and start to work towards it. And that's what you're doing.
Well, we do, but
whether
we always
you
have
realize
to
it or not.
Oh, 100%. I don't disagree by any means, but I think the only part that humanity is headed towards, and we're not stopping it.
Right.
This is not doom and gloom. World War III is coming. Right. Really bad shit is coming. They own everything. They control everything. Right. And it doesn't matter how much our conscience goes up. They turn the power off. They cut the water off.
No, they
release
create
the next
disaster.
virus.
Exactly.
We've got a battle coming, brother. Yeah. And what I mean is I don't want to go to war, but I would rather people start understanding that right now it's good to be a warrior in a garden, you know, type of thing, than a gardener in a war, because they are bringing the war to us. And that is, I know their plan.
No, I know.
how
I know their plan
is.
too.
And I know you do, brother. So it's like, before we can create, in my opinion, this collective consciousness, this next phase of humanity where we can, rise
We have to be
above,
safe.
we have to defeat evil.
Yeah.
And you can't.
So that we can be safe.
100%.
That's it.
And they're coming for us.
Yeah.
It's like that,
you're right.
guy's like,
That's
hide
a
your
dude,
kids, hide your
it's a
wives, everybody in here.
Fucking point. It is a fact that it is only when the human feels safe that he can begin to be creative. That's like, our lower centers are keep safe, procreate, primal. And then as we start to, we get an environment that's safe, we start to move up into the heart. We start to be able to create things. I think that's what you experienced in your time in the military, and then everything you went through with your relationships. And then finally you got to a place where you were safe enough to start to create and start
100%.
to put your knowledge out into the world. And I think that may be the path we're going to, but we have to get through this transitionary phase, and we will, because of, I think, conversations like this.
Well, that's why men like us, have to, we are all growing together, right? And that's the point of this, is that we're all figuring it out. You and I both have a lot of growth and understanding to do collectively as we develop our friendship, and individually as men with our spouses, with our children. There's think about like 2 years ago what you believed and what you believe now.
Right.
Or think about like 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
Yeah,
right?
Jesus. Yeah.
So
10 years ago, I was like,
Hillary Clinton's probably a better choice than Trump.
like as if.
Right, boy, never mind. Delete. You better edit that one out.
What do they mean, lock her up?
Yeah.
I wonder why they're saying that.
She's great.
Now I know.
But now she's wearing kids' faces in videos.
Yeah.
But no, my point, man, is that, I think this divine energy as men, our masculinity, and is, we have to be the leaders, right? And we have to step up, and we all have to learn from each other.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot I want to read into and look into today from you, is that we have to, if I'm in a room where everyone agrees with me, I don't want to be in that room.
No, you're not learning anything.
I'm not learning anything, but also, to change my opinion on some stuff, what men used to do back in Plato and Socrates, Aristotle, they debated.
Right, they debated.
They threw shit at the
themselves.
wall.
Right.
But through that, because in order for me to change my opinion or you to change yours, something has to break through for you to start to see it differently, right? And so men of intellect and intelligence debate.
Right.
Now, you never insult.
No.
But men of intelligence argue.
Right.
Men of intelligence debate. But while you're doing that, we are both sharpening each other's mental swords, spiritual swords, and also in time that sharpens our physical.
Absolutely.
So I love debate. I love a good argument in a healthy way,
Right. Right.
But excuse me, debate. I want to say argument because that negative
Right.
connotation
No,
there. But healthy debate, challenging opinions, other constructs of thought where it's logical, where it makes sense, where there's evidence. All day long. Let's do it, brother.
Absolutely.
Because the only way you and I are going to become the best version of ourselves is we open ourselves up to more information.
Right.
And then we
Absolutely.
either figure out what past the science,
That's right.
the scientific method and process to become a foundation of our morals and our values, or the way we look at life, or how we lead our families.
Right.
All those things are important, and we got to just, as quickly as we can, become the best men that we can, so that we're ready for whatever's coming. Because, there's seasons in life that we don't get to control.
Cycles and seasons.
You
said it, brother.
And so I'm really glad, man. I'm glad we met. And see, here's the thing: we met through Instagram, man.
I know, dude.
And
so there's the silicon algorithm working for, and I say that all the time. Like, don't underestimate. The divine works through the Silicon Valley too. As much as they use it to pit us against each other, we're also using it to find each other. And people are married to their spouse they met on Match.com. And it's amazing how these algorithms, they work as well as people are like the algorithms are the devil. And I'm like, no. They go both ways. Anyway,
I met the love of my life on Instagram.
that's what I mean. It's amazing.
We were friends for 5 years.
Right.
Just nothing, never anything inappropriate. Nothing. It went from just questions about stuff to Bible verses to spiritual conversations to conspiracy conversations, all kinds of stuff. Never crossed one line. And and then the second she messaged me, "Hey, I'm getting divorced," I was like, "I'll be there next weekend." And then that's the love of my life. I have never in my life felt so seen, supported, and whatever. Because it's like we're also not meant to be alone.
No.
You know.
And you're in the right place for it now more than ever. You know.
Oh yeah. So it's like we need each other. So anyways, I'm just saying, man. It all works good, but it's all can be bad too, just like you said. Because look at what's happening to people because of the internet and because of the propaganda and the brainwashing. So, brother, we have a battle to fight.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
We and a collective and we're fighting for good.
Yeah.
You know, and
we're all many of us are doing what we can. You know, in every way we can, and some of us doing more than others. You being one of them, and you know, I love what you said about. Really realizing becoming the best version of you is the first step, you know, in this fight, because you can't take up the charge until you have, you know, done that work on yourself. And I appreciate your time, man. This conversation has been epic.
Oh no, I think this
biblical
is
in scope.
This is my favorite podcast. I've been on hundreds. This is my favorite one that I've come on. You know. This has been my favorite podcast and conversation I've had, man.
It's been a real. Listen, if you guys are watching on whatever portions of this are alive on YouTube and you've enjoyed them, you're probably going to have to go over to my Patreon page to see the full uncensored version of this, because we have covered a lot of ground, and there's probably a pretty big portion of it that's going to be only viewable and listenable on Patreon. So check out my Patreon page. There'll be a link to that in the video description. If you're watching on YouTube and you enjoyed Matt and I's conversation, please make sure to subscribe. Matt also has a podcast that he's getting ready to put out. You can follow him on social media. If you're listening on Spotify and iTunes and all that, you know, please share this podcast and drop us 5 stars. Maybe write us a review if you have a minute. You know, we're trying to build our audience against a lot of algorithmic suppression, and it's not easy. And Matt, tell everyone where they can follow you and find you, and tell and when your new podcast is going to be coming out.
Yeah. Thank you, man. So it's called F and G. I'm sure everybody can guess what that stands for. F and G podcast. But right now we have a page. Once we launch, it'll grow. But my personal page is Matt_Murphy_official. On Instagram. Sometimes you have to type the whole thing in to find me.
Depending on how shadow banned you are.
Yeah. You know, however, some months I piss off the Instagram overlord. Some months they let me out of my cage. Right. You never know. But yeah, so I'm on X too, but I went on a TV show a little while ago. They're looking at the Grok suppression. I'm 95% suppressed on X. So don't even go there. But Instagram's the only thing that hasn't killed me yet. Yeah. F&G podcast is coming out. We've already filmed the pilot. Nice. We're trying to decide if we launch next week or record one more before we launch to give us a buffer. Yeah. And I'm also launching a nightly news show, which I want to talk to you about coming on some. Absolutely. Because we want to do just a no bullshit nightly news show with people who have the intellect to be able to see the intelligence that we're going to bring in, and then tell the truth and nothing but the truth in the beginning, and then we'll share our opinions at the end.
I'm going to talk to the people I'm working with for this new streaming site, because I think there'd be a great home for that on our site. You know, it's definitely something I would love to see on there, and possible revenue stream, and you know, we'll talk.
100%. We'll talk business, man. But I just want to get the truth out, and I'm sick of listening to typical liberal DC Drano, all these guys.
And me too, man. Benny Johnson.
Yeah,
fucking guy.
Man. I heard that he was a womanizer, and they bailed him out back in the day. Yeah. And they've had him by the balls since they stopped the Trump empire from going bankrupt. Because Epstein orchestrated in the 90s the bailout. And now Trump doesn't have a choice, because here's the thing, and I want to finish with this just so people understand before they hate people and demonize people, is, there's a lot of lines I won't cross. I won't sell my soul for money. I won't sell my soul for anything else. But you know what? You put a gun to my daughter's head and say, Matt, if you don't do this, I'm killing her. Well, guess what? I'm doing it. Right. And it's just, and it's not, that's just the reality. Right. You threaten a man's children, they're doing something. Right. No doubt. I'm not going to let somebody shoot my daughter because I wouldn't, whatever, So, man, I'm just saying, there is always, that too, 100%. Yeah. So there is always a line. There is always a line. Yeah. So I already tell everybody, the day I say I stand with Israel, is they've made me not an offer, but something that I couldn't refuse. Yeah. And so my point is,
Chappelle said that at the end of his stand-up.
Oh yeah.
It was it was the best moment. He was like, so they've been getting to people, and he was like, just so you know, if they ever get to me, I'll have a code word for you, and it'll be, I stand with Israel. Okay, he drops the mic. But
everybody has a line, brother.
No, it's true, man. Yeah. But, man. Well, on that note, man, thank you again.
Same, brother.
Appreciate it,
Thank you.
brother.
Brother, I really appreciate
Awesome,
you
brother.
having me, man.
Thank you,
Been
man.
good.